The blue paint appeared on Mara's dock at 9:17 on a Thursday morning. A woman in an orange vest leaned over the warped boards and sprayed a neat line beside the outer cleat. Two men stood in the lane with tripods and measuring rods. Grant came down from the marina so fast he forgot to shut off his golf cart. It rolled another 3 feet and nudged a stack of lobster traps. "What exactly are you marking?" he called. The woman straightened. "Public landing boundary." Grant looked at Mara, then at the boathouse behind her, as if one of them had told an inappropriate joke at a funeral. "There's no public landing here. It's in the harbor survey." The woman checked the map clipped to her board. "This dock is the only one." Mara still had a hammer in one hand. Rainwater dripped through the boathouse roof and tapped a metal bucket behind her with maddening regularity. Grant stepped onto the first board, felt it move, and stepped back. "That's impossible. This is private property. The structure is." The woman pointed with her pencil. "The landing isn't." 6 weeks earlier, Grant had called the place a pile of wet firewood and congratulated Mara on owning it. Now he was staring at the ruined dock as if she had stolen something from him. The strange part, the part Mara would remember, wasn't his anger. It was the fear underneath it. 6 weeks earlier, Mara had been carrying 3 plates of lemon pie into the closed dining room when she heard her brother say, "She'll take the boathouse." She stopped behind the swinging kitchen door. The restaurant had been closed for Ruth Bell's funeral, though the place still smelled of fried haddock, coffee, and the lemon oil Mara used on the old bar every Sunday night. Outside, rain blurred the harbor windows. Inside, her family had pushed 2 tables together beneath the framed photograph of Ruth standing beside a bluefin tuna she had absolutely not caught, though she had spent 32 years claiming otherwise. Diane sat at the head of the tables with a yellow legal pad. Elise had arranged folders in front of each chair. Grant was turning Ruth's silver sugar bowl over in his hands. "Can we not decide what I'll take while I'm getting dessert?" Mara asked. 3 heads turned. Grant set down the sugar bowl. "We were discussing options." "You said, 'She'll take the boathouse.' That sounded less like an option and more like weather." Elise gave a tired little laugh that asked everyone to behave. She was wearing a cream sweater with sleeves too long for her hands, the kind of expensive thing that made her look softer than she was. "Sit down, Mara. The pie's going to slide." Mara looked at the plates. One slice had tilted into the whipped cream. She carried them over anyway. There were 4 pieces of waterfront property in Ruth's estate, if a person was generous about the word property. The restaurant occupied the center parcel with its gravel lot and shallow service wharf. To the east stood Ruth's harbor house, a gray shingled place with 6 bedrooms and a porch Elise had been photographing for years. Beyond that, Grant's marina stretched along the deeper water. Fuel pier, repair shed, 28 slips, and a paved entrance off Cove Road. At the western edge, past the grease bins, blackberry brambles, and a lane no one had maintained since the first Bush administration, stood the boathouse. Mara had not been inside it for 11 years. Diane drew a line beneath something on her legal pad. "Your grandmother wanted us to settle this without fighting." "Grandma also wanted her ashes mixed into the chowder," Mara said. "We didn't do everything she wanted. That was morphine talking." She brought it up before the morphine. Grant smiled despite himself. It disappeared when Diane looked at him. Mara took the empty chair across from Elise. Her coat was still damp from the cemetery, and one wet cuff left a crescent on the table. "Okay, tell me the options." Diane's pen hovered over the pad. "The restaurant needs to remain intact. We all agree on that." Mara glanced around. Nobody looked at her. "We do?" "You know what I mean. It can't be divided. And you're keeping it. I've run it for 26 years. Mara could have said that Diane had run the dining room for 26 years. Ruth had negotiated with suppliers until 18 months ago. Mara had handled payroll, invoices, and the weekly panic over whether the freezer compressor was actually dying or only making that noise for attention. Grant had taken over marina operations when Ruth's hands started trembling. Elise had spent most of the last decade in Portland managing boutique hotels, returning on holidays with better wine than anybody liked. None of that fit into one sentence without sounding like a trial, so Mara picked up her fork. Diane continued. "Grant keeps the marina. It's already his livelihood." "It has debt," Grant said. "Everyone keeps forgetting that part." "You remind us every 9 minutes," Elise said. He pointed the sugar spoon at her. "Fuel tanks don't care about your tone." "Elise takes the house," Diane said, pressing on. She has the experience to make it produce income. Mara tasted the pie. The filling was too sharp. Ruth would have added another half cup of sugar and then denied it. And I get the boathouse. It has separate frontage, Elise said quickly. Almost 70 feet. 70 feet of what? Shoreline. I know what frontage means. Grant leaned back, his funeral suit strained across his chest. He had been lean once, the kind of man who could climb a mast with a wrench between his teeth. Now he had the solid build of somebody who spent more time telling other people where to carry things. There's a dock. There's a collection of boards extending into the water. That's what most docks are. Most docks don't have a rope across them, warning people not to die. Diane put down her pen. Mara. That voice had worked on Mara when she was 19. At 29, it mostly made her tired. What is the boathouse worth? Mara asked. Elise opened one of her folders. The town assessment puts the parcel at no. What would somebody pay for it right now? Silence moved around the table, choosing where to sit. Rain rattled against the big windows. On the wharf, a loose halyard slapped a mast in an irregular rhythm. Grant looked toward the sound automatically. He always noticed a boat before he noticed a person. The building needs work, he said. How much? I haven't inspected it. You inspected the marina. I operate the marina. And you inspected the house. Elise needed numbers. Mara looked at Diane. Did anyone go through the boathouse? Her mother folded her hands. Not thoroughly. So, the plan is that everybody takes the thing they already know is useful, and I take the thing nobody bothered to enter. That's not fair, Elise said. No, it isn't. I meant the way you're saying it. Grant exhaled through his nose. This is why we shouldn't do this today. You wanted to do it today, Mara said. I wanted clarity. No, you wanted Grandma buried before you gave me the rotten shed. The words landed harder than Mara expected. Elise looked down. Diane's face lost its practiced patience. Grant pushed back from the table. Nobody is giving you a rotten shed. You're getting waterfront property with its own structure. Then you take it. I can't run the marina from there. Why not? It has frontage. His jaw shifted. For half a second, Mara saw that he knew exactly how bad the place was. Diane touched the legal pad with 2 fingers, squaring it to the table. You are the only one without an established operation tied to a particular part of the estate. There it was, stated so reasonably that objecting to it would make Mara unreasonable. She looked past her mother toward the dark kitchen window. A reflection of the 4 of them floated over the harbor, Diane upright and composed, Grant broad and impatient, Elise pale and careful, Mara in the chair nearest the kitchen door, still wearing the black shoes she had bought on clearance that morning, because Ruth would have noticed scuffed toes at her own funeral. For 4 years, Mara said. I've been here 6 days a week. We know, Diane said. I did payroll for the restaurant and the marina. I covered lunches. I took Grandma to every appointment after she stopped driving. I slept upstairs when she started wandering at night. Grant rubbed his forehead. We're not saying you didn't help. Help! Mara could feel the words sliding over everything she had done, making it smaller. Help was carrying a bag to the car. Help was bringing a casserole. Help was not holding Ruth upright in a shower, while the proudest woman in Maine wept because she could no longer wash her own hair. Elise reached across the table. Her fingers stopped short of Mara's hand. The house isn't a prize. It needs to earn. I'm leaving my job to come back. You haven't left yet. I will. When? Elise withdrew her hand. Soon. Diane's voice softened, which was worse. You always liked the boathouse. Mara stared at her. You spent hours there with Mom. She taught you to refinish those old oars. That was a long time ago. It meant something to you. So did this restaurant. Of course it did. Apparently not in a way that counts. Grant stood and carried his plate to the service station, though he had taken only 1 bite. What do you want, Mara? The marina? Fine. You can have the loan payments, the fuel inspections, and 3 guys calling at midnight because a tourist flushed a dish towel down the head. I want somebody to admit this was decided before I walked in. Nobody spoke. The halyard struck the mast outside. Once. Twice. Then the wind shifted and it went quiet. Mara looked at Elise first. Elise had always confessed with her shoulders before she did with her mouth. They had drawn inward beneath the cream sweater. How long? Mara asked. Diane answered. We discussed a workable division while Ruth was still alive. Did she know? She knew we had to make decisions. That is not what I asked. Mara, your grandmother had good days and bad days. On a good day, did she know? Grant turned from the service station. This isn't productive. Mara laughed, one short sound. That means no? Diane's mouth tightened. Your grandmother trusted us to keep the Bell property together, by dividing it, by keeping each part in the family. Mara looked at the pie she no longer wanted. $600 sat in her checking account. Her car needed brakes. The restaurant office held the 3 boxes she had packed from Ruth's upstairs bedroom, because Diane had already said they needed to clear the house for appraisal photographs. Mara had been sleeping on the narrow sofa in that office for 9 nights. No lease, no savings, no operation tied to any particular part of the estate. They had not simply chosen the boathouse for her. They had chosen the moment when refusing it would leave her with nowhere to go. Diane slid a folder across the table. No one expects an answer tonight. Grant glanced at the wall clock. Monday would help, he said. Elise closed her eyes. Mara opened the folder. The top page showed a copy of the town parcel map. The boathouse lot looked like a bent finger pressed between the restaurant land and the water. Someone had circled it in blue ink. At the bottom, beneath the survey numbers, was one handwritten note. Structure, poor condition. Mara folded the page along the blue circle until Grant's marina disappeared behind it. I'll look at it tomorrow, she said. Diane let out a breath that was almost relief. Grant returned to the table and picked up Ruth's sugar bowl again. Bring boots, he said, and maybe a tetanus shot. The rope across the dock had once been white. Salt and weather had turned it the color of old teeth. Mara ducked under it anyway. The first 3 boards held. The 4th dipped beneath her boot with a soft, sodden complaint, and she stepped back so quickly her shoulder struck the boathouse wall. A scatter of gray paint flakes landed in her hair. Good morning to you too, she told the building. Wind came straight off the cove, carrying diesel from the marina and the bitter smell of rockweed exposed by the falling tide. In daylight, the boathouse was larger than she remembered, and considerably less committed to remaining upright. Its shore end rested on a low stone foundation. The harbor end stood over the water, on dark pilings furred with mussels. The roof sagged in the middle, and one upper window had been replaced with plywood so long ago, the plywood itself had rotted. Blackberry canes covered the lane behind her. Grant had not been exaggerating about boots. He had simply underestimated the need for a machete. Mara tried the side door. It opened 2 inches and stopped. She put her shoulder against it, shoved, and heard something scrape across the floor inside. Another shove made enough space for her to slip through sideways. The smell met her first. Wet wood, rope, mouse droppings, cold iron, and something faintly oily that belonged to an outboard motor no longer there. The thing blocking the door was a rusted anchor with one bent fluke. Above it, a row of cork floats hung from the rafters, like dusty ornaments. Light came through holes it was not supposed to come through. Mara stood still until her eyes adjusted. The lower floor was one open room with wide doors facing the harbor. One door hung crooked on its track. A narrow staircase climbed to the loft, though the bottom tread had split in half. Nets, hand tools, oars, and wooden lobster pot parts had been pushed against the walls. A workbench ran beneath the shoreside windows. Its surface was buried under jars of bolts, dried brushes, and curled pieces of sandpaper. Someone had left a red plaid thermos on the bench. Mara crossed the room carefully, testing each board before giving it her weight. She picked up the thermos. The plastic handle had cracked, and the metal cup was gone, but a strip of masking tape still circled the bottom. Ruth's handwriting had faded to a brown ghost. No sugar means no sugar, Frank. Mara laughed before she could stop herself. Frank Bell had been dead for 16 years and had never once taken coffee without sugar. Ruth had spent their entire marriage pretending not to know he kept packets in his shirt pocket. Mara set the thermos down exactly where she found it. The bench still bore scars from clamps. At one end, beneath a spill of copper nails, she found 3 shallow notches cut into the edge. Ruth had made those while teaching her how to shape an oar handle, not because notches were part of the process, because Ruth had missed with the chisel 3 times and blamed a passing tugboat for distracting her. For a moment, the room rearranged itself around the memory. The roof was sound. The doors rolled cleanly. Ruth stood beside the bench in canvas pants, cursing varnish bubbles and refusing to admit she needed glasses. Then a drop of water struck Mara's neck. She looked up. A dark stain spread across the rafters, though the morning was clear. The building had been remembering rain. Mara found a broom and used it to test the stairs. The remaining treads seemed solid enough if she kept close to the wall. Halfway up, she heard claws moving inside the loft and froze. "Please be a squirrel," the claws stopped. "I'm serious. I can emotionally handle a squirrel." Something small and fast vanished through the gap beneath the eave. Mara chose not to identify it. The loft had once held sails and spare gear. Now it held 2 broken chairs, a rolled canvas awning, mildewed cushions, and a narrow iron bed frame without a mattress. The harborside windows looked over the whole cove. Grant's slips spread to the east in tidy rows. Beyond them, the ferry terminal occupied a concrete finger of land near the harbor mouth. Ruth's house stood behind bare maples, dignified even under a gray sky. The restaurant roof appeared between the buildings. Its exhaust fan turning new, the dining room would not open until noon. From here, the Bell property looked continuous. The family division existed only on paper and in people's heads. A car door slammed outside. "Mara?" Elise's voice came from the lane. "Up here. Is the floor safe?" "Define safe." "I'm going to stay down here." Mara descended to find her sister, carrying 2 coffees and wearing ankle boots meant for sidewalks. Blackberry thorns had already snagged one sleeve of her coat. "You dressed for it?" Mara said. "I dressed for coffee. The vegetation attacked me." Elise held out a cup. Mara accepted it and checked the label. "Oat milk? You still drink that, right? I drank it twice in 2021. "Oh, it's fine." Elise's eyes moved around the room, taking in the bowed doors and stained ceiling. Her expression changed in small, careful increments. "It's bigger than I remembered. So is the hole in the roof." "Where?" Mara pointed. Elise looked up and immediately stepped out from beneath it, though nothing was falling. "That could be flashing. That could be the entire roof." "You don't know, neither do you." Elise wrapped both hands around her coffee. "Grant said he'd send one of his maintenance guys over. He said that this morning. He said it last night, before or after he recommended the tetanus shot." Elise studied a jar of screws on the bench. He shouldn't have made a joke. Grant shouldn't make most of his jokes. He doesn't know what to say when he feels guilty. Mara took a drink. The oat milk made the coffee taste like wet cereal. Does he feel guilty? I think we all do. Not enough to trade. Elise leaned against the bench, then reconsidered after it creaked. The house isn't free money. The insurance alone is awful. It needs a new boiler, the porch is separating, and Mom thinks I can have paying guests in by Memorial Day. You've wanted that house since you were 20. I've wanted to stop paying Portland rent since I was 20. There was no self-pity in it. Elise had a talent for making ambition sound like basic sanitation. Mara walked to the harbor doors. Through the gap, sunlight moved across the water in hard silver patches. Did Grandma agree to this? Elise did not answer quickly enough. Did she even hear the plan? She knew Grant would keep the marina. That was always obvious. And the rest? She and Mom talked about the restaurant. That isn't an answer. Mara, toward the end, conversations weren't. Don't do that. Elise's mouth closed. Mara turned from the doors. Don't use her illness to blur every answer. She had bad afternoons. She also beat Grant at cribbage 2 days before she died and accused him of cheating because he won one hand. He probably was cheating. He absolutely was. That's not the point. Elise stared into her coffee. I never heard her say you should get the Boathouse. Thank you. I never heard her say you shouldn't. There it is. I'm trying to be honest. You're trying to be honest in a way that doesn't require you to give anything back. Color rose in Elise's face. She set her coffee on the workbench. Would you like me to refuse the house? Mara wanted to say yes. The word came up hot and ready. Then she pictured the 4 of them back at the restaurant. Another set of folders, another polite war. If Elise refused, Diane would not suddenly recognize Mara's devotion and hand her the keys. Grant would produce a new workable division. The house would be sold or folded into the restaurant property. Mara would still be sleeping beside the filing cabinet. I'd like you to admit you knew before yesterday, she said. Elise rubbed her thumb over a brown paper seam on the coffee cup. Grant called me 3 weeks ago. While Grandma was alive, yes. Did you say yes? I said the house made sense for me. Did you ask what made sense for me? No. The answer was so plain that Mara had nothing ready for it. Outside, an engine started at the marina. Someone shouted for a stern line. Grant's voice answered, impatient but precise. He could identify a failing alternator by sound. He could remember the fuel capacity of every boat in the cove. If Mara asked what month her car registration expired, he would have guessed the wrong year. Elise picked up the coffee she had brought Mara and replaced it with her own. Regular milk, she said. 1 sugar. Mara tasted it. Correct. They stood without speaking. A gull landed on the dock, considered the boards, and immediately flew away. Smart bird, Mara said. Elise smiled into the oat milk coffee. They spent an hour making a list on the back of an old restaurant menu. Roof, pilings, floor, doors, electricity, stairs, windows, mold, possibly squirrel. Mara added bed and crossed it out, then added it again. Elise measured the loft with the tape clipped to Mara's coat. There was room for a bed, a small table, and not much else. The iron frame could be cleaned. An old porcelain sink sat beneath a tarp in the lower room, but there was no plumbing connected to it. A narrow room at the back contained a toilet so old it looked historical. No, Elise said after lifting the lid. Whatever you're thinking, no. I'm thinking I could charge admission. You could threaten people with it. By the time they left, Mara's coffee was cold, and the list had filled both sides of the menu. Grant arrived in his golf cart as they emerged into the lane. He wore marina coveralls and a Navy watch cap. A young seasonal worker from the marina sat beside him, holding a chainsaw. Grant looked from Elise's boots to Mara's paper. Well? It's bad, Mara said. I told you. You told me to get a shot. You didn't tell me the roof is storing weather. He got out and took the list. His eyes traveled down it without visible surprise. You knew, Mara said. I knew it needed work. How much work? Mara, nobody's been using it. That isn't a number. I can't give you one without going through it. Go through it. Grant glanced toward the side door but did not move. I have a launch at 11. You have 14 minutes. His jaw tightened. Then he handed his watch cap to the seasonal worker and ducked inside. Mara and Elise followed. Grant's attitude changed as soon as he entered. Jokes disappeared. He crouched at the floor seam, pressed a screwdriver into one timber, and examined the damp point. He leaned out the harbor doors to study the pilings. When he climbed the loft stairs, he distributed his weight along the wall, exactly as Mara had. Competence made him easier to love and harder to forgive. He returned with dust on his shoulder. The shore half is sound, he said. Mostly. Roof has to be opened before anybody knows. 2 outer pilings are gone. Another one's questionable. Don't put weight on the dock past the first cleat. Can it be saved? Grant looked around the room. Anything can be saved if you hate money. Elise folded her arms. That's not helpful. It's accurate. Mara took back the menu. Will you help? Grant's eyes lifted to hers. Not will the marina help. Not will one of your employees come over when work is slow. She had made it personal on purpose, and he knew it. I can get the brush cleared, he said. Bring the small dumpster down. I've got some lumber behind the repair shed. That wasn't my question. He looked toward the harbor doors. Yeah, I'll help. When? After launch week? A Bell family date. Meaningful, flexible, and almost never written down. Mara folded the menu and put it in her pocket. On Monday morning, the settlement papers waited beside Diane's adding machine. Mara signed them at 10:43. At 10:45, Diane glanced at the 3 boxes in the corner and said, Now that things are settled, we really do need this office back. Mara looked at the boxes, then at her mother. Back for what? Diane sat behind Ruth's desk, already turning the signed pages into 3 precise stacks. For work. I work here. I mean, we need the room functional again. It is functional. I function in it every night. Diane's hands stopped. The office had never been intended for sleeping. The green sofa was 6 inches shorter than Mara. A rolling garment rack held 2 dresses and her winter coat. Her toothbrush stood in a paper cup beside the employee time cards, and she kept her clean underwear in the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet beneath invoices from Atlantic Seafood Supply. Nobody could have walked in and mistaken it for stability. Diane lowered her voice, though they were alone. I thought you'd move your things to the Boathouse, the one with no electricity, plumbing, or usable roof. Not permanently. just while you figure something out. I thought that was what I was doing here. You've been here more than a week, 9 days. Yes, Mara waited for the number to sound different once spoken. It did not. Diane slipped the signed settlement into a folder. You can stay in my den if you need to. The offer should have softened something. Instead, Mara pictured Diane's den. A pull-out sofa beneath a shelf of porcelain lighthouses, a television kept permanently on cable news, and Diane standing in the doorway every morning, asking what Mara's plan was in a tone that made plan sound like apology. For how long? Her mother's eyes shifted toward the computer monitor. Until the boathouse is ready. That could be a year. Then obviously we'd reassess. Every day? Mara. I'm asking how the generous offer works. Diane removed her reading glasses. A red indentation crossed the bridge of her nose. She looked exhausted. The funeral, the restaurant, Ruth's death, the paperwork. Grief had put gray beneath her eyes, though she wore enough foundation that a person had to know where to look. Why do you make kindness so difficult? She asked. Mara almost apologized. The instinct was so quick and familiar that she felt the first syllable form against her teeth. Instead, she picked up the box containing her clothes. I'll have everything out by lunch. That is not what I said. I know. Mara, don't be dramatic. The box was heavier than she expected. The bottom bowed against her arms. Can you get the door? Diane remained in her chair for a second, caught between anger and the simple fact that her daughter's hands were full. Then she stood and held the office door open. Mara carried the box through the kitchen. The lunch crew was arriving. Walter, the fry cook, raised 2 fingers in greeting while tying his apron. Patrice stood at the prep table trimming green beans. Both of them looked at the box, then politely looked away. Moving up in the world? Walter asked. Waterfront property. Fancy. Bring your own bucket. He nodded as if that described most places he had lived. Mara loaded the box into the back of her hatchback. The rear brakes gave their usual faint squeal when the car shifted under the weight. She returned for the other 2 boxes, the garment rack, and the camp mattress Diane kept in the restaurant storeroom for hurricane nights. Her mother watched from the kitchen doorway as Mara tied the mattress to the roof with old clothesline. You can't sleep there, Diane said. I'll be fine. You just told me there's no plumbing. There's an ocean. That is not plumbing. It's very old plumbing. Diane did not smile. Come to the house tonight. I'll let you know. Don't say that when you mean no. Mara pulled the knot tight, then no. She drove around the building instead of taking the Blackberry lane. The car could not fit through it yet, so she parked near the grease bins and carried her belongings the rest of the way. On the 3rd trip, one side of the clothes box split open. Socks, 2 shirts, and Ruth's framed obituary photograph slid into the weeds. Mara crouched beside the lane, holding the cracked frame. In the photograph, Ruth was 74 and impatient with the photographer. Her white hair had lifted in the harbor wind. She was wearing a pearl necklace and a red waterproof jacket, a combination she considered appropriate for nearly every occasion. You could have left instructions, Mara told her. A mosquito landed on Ruth's cheek. Mara slapped the glass, then sat back on her heels and laughed until the laugh tipped into something else. She pressed both palms over her eyes. Gravel dug through the knees of her black funeral pants. Somewhere beyond the brambles, Grant's forklift beeped as it reversed. She allowed herself 3 minutes. Then she put the loose clothes back into the broken box, tucked Ruth's photograph under her arm, and kept walking. The loft was too damp for cardboard, so she stacked the boxes on 2 overturned milk crates. The camp mattress fit inside the old iron bed frame if she bent it slightly in the middle. She covered the mattress with the rolled canvas awning, brushed mouse droppings from the windowsill, and opened both windows to let the place breathe. By 2, the harbor wind had knocked Ruth's photograph face down 3 times. Mara finally wedged it between a jar of brass screws and the red plaid thermos on the workbench downstairs. The refrigerator in the restaurant kitchen became noticeable only when it stopped humming. The boathouse, by contrast, had 1,000 separate noises. Water sucked between the pilings. Loose shingles clicked. Ropes tapped the walls. The crooked harbor door gave a low groan whenever the wind pressed it inward, like a sleeper arguing with a dream. Mara wrote each noise on the back of the repair list and tried to decide which ones meant danger. At 4:30, her phone rang. Grant. She answered while attempting to hang the canvas awning beneath the worst roof stain. Hey, he said. Mark said you moved your stuff down there. Walter had apparently become Mark somewhere between the kitchen and the marina. Walter. What? His name is Walter. I know his name. I was talking about Mark at the fuel dock. You said Mark saw me? He heard from Walter. Then why bring Mark into it? Grant paused. Are you sleeping in the boathouse? Mara tucked the phone against her shoulder and pulled the canvas tighter. One corner came loose. Cold grit fell into her eye. Not at this exact moment. You can't stay there. Mom said the same thing. She's right. You should call her. You could have a little meeting. I'm serious. The dockside isn't stable. The loft is on the shore side. That roof leaks, I noticed. Mara, come sleep on my couch. Grant lived above the marina office in an apartment that smelled of boat wax and reheated chili. His couch was good leather, longer than Diane's, and positioned beneath a framed aerial photograph of the marina before Grant had expanded it. He was also awake by 5 every morning and considered closed doors a personal challenge. How long? Mara asked. For a few nights. Until what? Until we get this sorted. We? You know what I mean. She did. We meant Grant would make some calls, mention how busy he was, and become irritated when she asked whether the calls had produced anything. Can you bring the dumpster tomorrow? She asked. No. I told you, after launch week. You have the small one sitting empty behind the repair shed. I need it for shrink wrap. It's June. For the old shrink wrap. So bring it. I need a guy to haul it. You own a forklift, 2 trucks, and at least one guy you keep calling Mark. Mark's on fuel. What about Walter? Very funny. The canvas pulled free again and struck Mara across the ear. She swore. What happened? Grant asked. My roof attacked me. Mara, bring the dumpster. I'll see what I can do. She closed her eyes. That means no in Bell. It means I'll see what I can do. You told me you'd help. I am helping. I'm offering you a couch. I don't need a couch. I need the dumpster. Grant was quiet long enough that she heard a socket wrench drop on his end. I can get it there Thursday, he said. It was Monday. Fine. And you're not using the dock. I'm not suicidal. Those aren't always the same thing with you. Before she could answer, he hung up. Mara secured the canvas with 3 copper nails from the workbench, though she suspected Ruth would have objected to using copper for cloth. She found an orange life jacket in a cabinet and hung it over the broken stair tread so she would not forget the gap at night. Then she went back to the restaurant for her evening bookkeeping shift. Diane had moved the adding machine to the cleared side of the desk. A new box of printer paper occupied the spot where Mara's toiletries had been. The paper cup containing her toothbrush was gone. Mara checked the trash beneath the desk. Empty. She found it on a shelf in the employee restroom, behind a bottle of glass cleaner. At 7, Diane placed a plate of baked haddock beside the keyboard without comment. Mara ate while reconciling 3 fuel receipts Grant had submitted, with no boat numbers, and 1 restaurant invoice dated 2 months before Ruth died. At 9:15, she finished entering payroll and carried the plate to the kitchen. Diane was counting the register. I left a towel and clean sheets by the back door, she said. Mara looked at her. In case you insist on this. Thank you. The sheets are for the double bed. It's a single frame. Diane's fingers stopped on a stack of 20s. I thought it was a double. You haven't been inside, have you? I was there years ago. When? I don't remember. Mara nodded. Good night, Mom. Outside, a folded stack waited beside the back door. 2 white sheets, a bath towel, a pillow, and Ruth's thick blue wool blanket. Diane had included an extension cord. The cord was 50 feet long. The nearest outlet was nearly 300 feet away. Mara carried it anyway. Darkness changed the lane. The blackberry canes leaned into her flashlight beam, and the water beyond them had become a flat black shape breathing against the rocks. She unlocked the side door with the new hardware store key Grant had given her and climbed to the loft. The canvas awning sagged overhead, holding a shallow bowl of water from a brief evening shower. The mattress was still dry. She made the bed with the oversized sheets and tucked Ruth's blanket around herself. Through the open window, lights shone from the harbor house. Elise moved past an upstairs window carrying a lamp. Farther east, Grant's marina glowed white and orderly beneath its security lights. The boathouse had no light at all. Mara lay listening to the timbers answer the tide. At 1:13, rain began. At 1:20, water found the edge of the canvas and poured directly into her left shoe. At 1:22, Mara moved the shoe and went back to sleep. The dumpster did not come Thursday? It did not come Friday. On Saturday morning, Mara borrowed Walter's pickup, loaded the first pile of rotten boards herself, and drove them to the transfer station. When she returned, an old man in green work pants was sitting on the boathouse step with a steel thermos between his knees. His white beard had gone yellow around his mouth, and a canvas tool bag rested beside him. Mara recognized Ellis Ward before he stood. He had repaired bell boats for Ruth, then quit Grant's Marina after an argument neither man described the same way. Ellis looked at the empty truck bed. "You pulled those boards alone?" "Yes, that was stupid." "Good morning," he nodded toward the boathouse. "You keeping it?" "I signed for it." "That's not what I asked." Mara looked past him at the warped dock, the roof, and the crooked doors. "Yes," she said, "I'm keeping it." Ellis picked up his tool bag. "Then, let's see what's trying to kill you first." Ellis began with the stairs. He pushed his boot against the bottom tread, watched it split another inch, and said, "That one's decorative," I figured. "The next two are hopeful. Fourth one's lying. How can a stair lie? Same way people do. Looks you straight in the face." He removed a flat pry bar from his bag and tapped the wall stringer. The sound changed from sharp to dull near the floor. He marked the spot with a carpenter's pencil, then handed the pencil to Mara. "Write soft. On the wall? You worried about the paint?" Mara wrote soft on the gray boards. They moved through the lower room that way. Ellis pointed. Mara wrote rot, leak, do not lean, old leak, new leak. On the harbor doors, he wrote Jesus Christ himself. That bad? That track lets go, the door falls outward. Anybody standing there goes with it. She glanced toward the open water. That seems inefficient. Most dying is. Ellis crawled beneath the workbench, climbed halfway into the loft rafters, and leaned through a broken window to inspect the roof edge. He did not rush. He also did not explain anything until he had touched it. His hands were swollen at the knuckles and permanently dark along the nail beds. Ruth used to say Ellis could fix an engine by insulting the correct part. When he came down, he opened his thermos and poured coffee into the steel cap. "Well?" Mara asked. "You own a lot of problems. I had gathered that. Good news is they're not all today's problems." He pointed toward the shore wall. The foundation stones were dry and mostly square. The main beam beneath the loft had surface damage but no deep rot. The roof over the harbor side would need to be opened. The dock was worse than the building, though not as bad as the rope suggested. "Outer two pilings are done," he said. "Third one's got maybe a season if nobody gets brave. First section could hold 3 careful people. What about 4 anxious people? Depends how anxious." Mara took the pencil from behind her ear. "What has to happen before I can stop sleeping under a rain trampoline?" Ellis looked up at the sagging canvas. "You rigged that?" "Yes." "Then I'm surprised you lived to ask." He walked outside, studied the roof from the lane, and pointed to a patch where shingles had lifted. "We can tarp the ridge, brace the stair, secure that door. That gets you through a dry week. And after the dry week, you get another week, then another, if you're lucky and not foolish. How much? For today? For all of it." Ellis drank his coffee. Mara waited. "Don't do that old man thing where you stare at the water instead of answering," I'm adding. "You're looking at a cormorant. Cormorant's free." He screwed the cap onto his thermos. "Roof, if the rafters are decent, 6,000 to 8,000. Pilings and dock, 12, if you know people. More if you don't. Electrical depends on whether the old service is dead or merely abandoned. Plumbing, I wouldn't guess without hurting your feelings." Mara looked at the boathouse. The numbers passed through her mind one at a time and found nothing to attach to. She had $583 after groceries, the hardware store lock, and 2 tanks of gas. "Okay," she said. Ellis studied her face. "That word doing a lot of work. It's the only one I can afford." He crouched beside his bag and removed a hammer. "What do you know about books?" "Which kind?" "The kind that make the government stop sending envelopes." "Business accounts?" "I repair motors out of my garage. I've got 3 years of receipts in a bait bucket." "Are they bait receipts?" "Some." Mara held out her hand for the hammer. "How many hours of stair repair is a bait bucket worth?" "Depends what's alive in it." That was the beginning of the arrangement. Ellis drove home and returned with 2 lengths of pressure-treated lumber, a folded roof tarp, and a ladder tied to the top of his truck with knots Mara did not trust. She cleared broken boards while he cut new stair treads. At noon, they ate egg salad sandwiches he had packed in wax paper. He removed the crusts from his and left them in a neat pile. You don't like crust? My teeth don't. You could make softer bread. My kitchen doesn't take requests. They had braced the stairs and rehung the first harbor door when Grant's golf cart stopped in the lane. The small dumpster was not behind it. Grant got out slowly. His eyes settled on Ellis, then on the new lumber. Didn't know we were doing a reunion, he said. Ellis kept tightening a bolt. We're not. Where'd that stock come from? My truck. Grant looked at Mara. I have lumber for you. Behind the repair shed. I told you I'd bring it. You told me Thursday. I got busy. Thursday and Friday? Believe it or not, the marina keeps operating when you're not looking at it. Ellis set down the wrench. Door needs a second hand. Mara took the lower corner. Ellis lifted from the top, and together they eased the roller back into its track. Grant watched. What did he tell you about the pilings? He asked. That they're bad. I told you that. You told me 2 were gone and 1 was questionable. He showed me which ones. I could have shown you. You didn't. Grant looked toward Ellis. She can't afford your rates. My rates are none of your business. They become my business when she thinks she can rebuild a marine structure with scrap and favors. Mara felt the door's weight shifting against her shoulder. Could we have this argument after the thing that can crush me is attached? Grant stepped forward automatically. He took the corner from her, lifted, and said, Pin. Ellis drove the retaining pin into the roller assembly. For several seconds, the 3 of them worked without speaking. Grant tested the door, rolled it halfway, then adjusted the bottom guide with the toe of his boot. The movement became smooth and almost silent. There, he said. Ellis rolled it again. Bottom guide's bent. It's been bent for 20 years. 21? You hit it with the travel lift. Grant's face tightened. I was 19. Still bent. Mara leaned against the safe side of the wall. Is this the argument that made you quit? No, both men said. Neither offered the real one. Grant took off his watch cap and wiped his forehead with his sleeve. I'll send the dumpster Monday. I need it now. I don't have a driver. I can drive your truck. No. Why? Because you backed the seafood van into a piling. I was 20. Still bent, Ellis said. Grant put his cap back on. Monday. Mara looked at him. If it isn't here Monday, I'm hiring someone and sending the marina the bill. You can't send me a bill for your property. You promised labor as part of getting me to agree. That was family helping family, not a contract. The words came out sharper than he seemed to intend. His expression changed, but he did not take them back. Mara nodded once. Good to know the difference. Grant glanced at the repair notes written across the walls, the mattress visible through the loft railing, and Ruth's blanket folded at the foot of it. For an instant, he looked ashamed. Then his phone rang. He checked the screen. I have a fuel delivery. Of course you do. He turned toward the golf cart, stopped, and took a pair of work gloves from his back pocket. He placed them on the bench beside Ruth's thermos. Those shingles will slice your hands, he said. Then he left. Ellis waited until the golf cart disappeared. He always carry extra gloves? No. Don't. I didn't say anything. You made a sound. Cormorant. They worked until Mara's shoulders shook when she raised her arms. The tarp took both of them, 4 lengths of rope, and language Ruth would have admired. Ellis showed her how to distribute the tension so wind could not get underneath. When they finished, the blue tarp lay tight over the damaged ridge instead of hanging inside the building like a failed hammock. The boathouse looked worse from the outside. It felt better from within. Mara stood in the loft while Ellis sprayed the roof with a garden hose. Water rushed down the shingles, slapped the eaves, and poured off the harbor side. She watched the ceiling. 1 drop appeared near the window, then nothing. She touched the dry canvas over her bed. Congratulations, Ellis called from outside. You're down to regular damp. His bait bucket contained more than receipts. On Sunday evening, Mara sat at Ruth's workbench sorting invoices, carburetor parts, old batteries, and 1 mummified herring Ellis claimed not to recognize. He had recorded payments in 3 places, a wall calendar, a pocket notebook, and the back of a 2020 tide chart. You charge Mr. Talbot $90 to rebuild a fuel pump. That sounds right. He paid you with half a cord of wood. Good maple. How did you report it? Burned it. She looked at him over the top of the tide chart. What? You cannot set your tax records on fire. I didn't set records on fire. I set wood on fire, kept us warm. Us? Ellis was quiet for a beat. Me. Mara turned back to the receipts before he had to decide whether to say more. The dumpster appeared Monday at 6:10 in the morning. Grant left it at the mouth of the lane, where the blackberry canes narrowed, with a note taped to the side. Couldn't get it through. You'll need to clear this. Below that, in smaller writing, don't overfill. Mara was still reading the note when Diane called. Where are you? Her mother asked. At my waterfront estate. You were supposed to open the office? I don't work Mondays. You've always worked Mondays. I've always worked when you needed me. The silence on the other end had a different quality now. Mara, I need payroll finished. I finished payroll Saturday. And the supplier reconciliation. That's another 3 hours. You can do it after lunch. Mara looked at the dumpster 40 yards from where she needed it. Her palms were blistered beneath Grant's gloves. That week's restaurant check would cover groceries and not much more. How many hours am I scheduled for? She asked. What? Paid hours. This week. I don't have the sheet in front of me. Last week you paid me for 12. You did 12 hours of bookkeeping. I also covered Thursday dinner, Saturday prep, and drove to Portland for the replacement mixer part. You're family. We all step in. Mara stared at Grant's note. Family helping family, not a contract. I can do 12 hours, she said. Anything after that, I need paid. Diane's breath came through the phone. This is because of the office. This is because I need money. We all need money. Then you understand. Diane hung up without saying goodbye. An hour later, Mara walked into the bakery near the ferry terminal with sawdust in her hair and asked if they needed help. The owner looked at Grant's gloves, Mara's funeral shoes, and the fresh scratch down her cheek from a blackberry cane. Can you be here at 4:30 tomorrow morning? Mara thought of the boathouse roof, the dock, and $500 disappearing by the week. Yes, she said. Can you make biscuits? No. Good. Then you won't argue with me about how. The biscuits required less philosophy than Mara expected. Cold butter, hot oven, don't need them like they owe you money, the bakery owner said. Her name was Claudia Webb. She was 53, narrow as a fireplace poker, and capable of carrying 2 sheet pans in each hand, without using an oven mitt. She wore red frame glasses attached to a beaded chain, and had a tattoo of a rolling pin on her forearm. Mara stood at the stainless steel table at 4:45 in the morning, staring at the dough stuck to her fingers. How do you know when I've needed them enough? You don't. You know when you've needed them too much, and then we sell them to people from Boston. By 6, Mara had burned 1 tray, produced another that Claudia called structurally sound, and learned that ferry crews drank coffee as if the Atlantic Ocean had personally deprived them of sleep. The woman who came in at 6:12 wore navy work pants, steel-toed boots, and a fluorescent jacket with bellwether ferry stitched over the chest. Her dark hair was braided tight against her head. She ordered 2 black coffees and a ham biscuit, then stared at Mara across the pastry case. You're the restaurant woman. Mara looked behind herself. That sounds more mysterious than my actual job. You charged me for 2 lobster rolls I never got. Nora Castillo. Nora raised an eyebrow. You remember, you called 7 times. I called 4. You called 4. Then you came in twice and stood beside the register while I was helping other people. Because your manager kept saying she'd look into it. My mother. That explains the expression. Mara poured the coffees. I reversed the charge. 3 weeks later, 2.5. Nora accepted the cups, but not the revision. You also mailed me a gift card. That was Grandma. She wrote sorry about the idiots in green pen. That was definitely Grandma. Nora's mouth pulled sideways. It was not quite a smile, but it had considered the possibility. Claudia came from the kitchen carrying a tray of scones. If you two are finished litigating breakfast, there's a line. There was one man behind Nora. He lifted a hand. I'm comfortable waiting. Nora paid, tipped $2, and took her coffee. Sorry about the idiots, Mara said. Nora glanced at the flower on Mara's shirt. You don't work there anymore? I do 12 hours a week. That is an extremely specific answer. It's an extremely specific situation. Nora nodded as though she understood more than Mara had said, then left for the ferry terminal. By 9, Mara's lower back felt as if someone had inserted a hot hinge into it. Claudia handed her $42 in cash for the trial shift, and a paper bag containing 6 biscuits that had split sideways. You can come back tomorrow, Claudia said. Are these my failures? Those are your education. Mara ate one in the car. It was heavy but excellent, which gave her unreasonable hope. The dumpster was half full by noon. Clearing the lane took 2 days, 3 ruined shirts, and one battle with a blackberry root that Ellis described as personal. He showed her how to wrap a chain around the root crown and pull it with Walter's truck at low speed. The root emerged from the earth like a wet, black animal, spraying both of them with mud. "Ha!" Ellis said. Mara wiped dirt from her mouth. "Did you just celebrate against a plant?" It started it. With the lane open, Grant moved the dumpster to the boathouse himself. He did it at 6 in the morning, before the marina opened, and did not come inside. Mara found a second note taped to the metal. "Better?" She turned it over and wrote, "Yes." Then, after a moment, "Thank you." She left it beneath the windshield wiper of his golf cart. By afternoon, the paper was gone. Mara's days settled into a schedule nobody sensible would have chosen. She woke at 3:50 beneath Ruth's blue blanket, pulled on bakery clothes in the loft, and brushed her teeth with bottled water over the old porcelain sink. By 4:15 she was driving along the dark harbor road, with the heater on high to clear the windshield. She mixed biscuit dough, filled pastry cases, and learned the ferry cruise orders. At 10, she returned to the boathouse and worked with Ellis until her muscles quit. 3 evenings a week, she reconciled restaurant accounts while Diane communicated through notes left beside the keyboard. Mara, check halibut invoice. Mara, Grant says fuel, total is wrong. Mara, please don't leave sawdust on chair. They saw each other in passing, in kitchen doorways and across the parking lot. Diane always asked whether Mara was eating. Mara always said yes. Neither mentioned the den. Elise came twice with furniture from the harbor house. A wooden chair with a rush seat and a narrow dresser whose bottom drawer stuck. "I'm not giving you junk," she said as they wrestled the dresser through the side door. "These don't fit the rental plan. So it's curated junk. It's coastal overflow. The dresser fit beneath the loft window." Elise lined its drawers with pages from a wallpaper sample book and pretended not to notice when Mara moved her clothes out of the broken box. On her third visit, Elise brought a camping lantern and stayed to scrape flaking paint from the shoreside windows. "Mom says you're punishing her," she said. Mara held the ladder while Ellis replaced a section of fascia above them. "I'm working at a bakery. She means by not coming to dinner. I work evenings. You work 2 evenings. The other evenings I smell like old wood and sweat. Mom has known you a long time. She's familiar with your range." Mara laughed despite herself. Elise smiled, then scraped too hard and gouged the window trim. "Don't tell Ellis." "He can hear you," Ellis said from the ladder. That afternoon, the first section of dock took new boards. They were not beautiful. Ellis had obtained them from a dismantled float behind the cannery, and they bore old bolt holes and patches of green paint. He and Mara replaced only what could not hold weight. The rest they reinforced from below. Ellis made her climb down at low tide and showed her how to sister a damaged beam, fastening sound wood beside the weak portion rather than hiding it. "You don't pretend rot isn't there," he said. "You give the weight somewhere else to go." Mara held the wrench while he tightened the bolt. "That sounds suspiciously like wisdom. It's carpentry. Wisdom pays worse." The old dock began attracting attention before it became usable. People walking the harbor road stopped at the mouth of the cleared lane. A man from the bait shop asked whether Ruth's Landing was reopening. 2 women from a cruising sailboat came ashore in a dinghy, saw the rope, and shouted apologies before rowing away. Mara told Ellis about them. "Used to be boats there all day," he said. "When?" "Before the marina got built out. People came for ice, groceries, phone calls. Ruth kept a coffee pot in the boathouse. Why? Because she liked telling everybody their coffee was worse than hers. I mean, why this dock? Easy landing, deep enough at low water. Lane goes straight to the road. Grant's dock is deeper. Grant charges. He charges now. Grandma owned it then. Ellis drove a bolt through the new board. Your grandmother understood that owning a useful thing and keeping it all to yourself weren't the same accomplishment." Mara looked toward the marina. Grant was fueling a motor yacht at the outer pier. Even at a distance, she recognized the way he stood when dealing with wealthy customers. Shoulders relaxed, hands still, as if nothing in the world could surprise him. At the ferry terminal the next morning, Nora was loading a pallet stacked with gray plywood. Mara saw it through the bakery window and crossed the road during her break. Is that marine grade? Nora looked down from the forklift. Are those the Boston biscuits? Mara held up the paper bag. Claudia says they're structurally sound. Then yes, marine grade. The plywood sheets were scarred along the edges but dry. Nora explained that they had been used as temporary deck protection during engine work and were headed for disposal. Could I buy 3? You could take 6 if you move them before my supervisor changes his mind. I have a hatchback, I can see that. Nora lowered the pallet. She took one of the biscuits and bit into it while assessing Mara's car. Roof rack, mattress rope. That sentence concerns me. Nora finished the biscuit, then checked the time. I get off at 2. You don't have to deliver them, I know. At 2:20, a ferry maintenance truck backed down the Boathouse lane. Nora unloaded 8 sheets, not 6, and refused the $20 Mara offered. You fixed the lobster roll charge, she said, eventually. Consider us even. She walked into the boathouse, stopped beneath the repaired harbor door, and looked up at the roof notes. What's Jesus Christ? Structural terminology. Nora nodded. Ferry uses that system too. She returned the following Sunday with a cordless drill and stayed for 4 hours. The boathouse changed by inches. The roof still wore its blue tarp. The loft still smelled damp on foggy mornings. Mara's savings fell below $300, then rose slightly with bakery wages, then fell again when her car needed a brake caliper. Every repair uncovered another decision: replace or reinforce, buy new or salvage, fix what showed or what carried weight. A month after she signed the papers, 2 harbor survey notices appeared on the bulletin board outside the restaurant. Diane had pinned them beneath the weekly specials without reading them. The town was mapping shoreline access, emergency approaches, dock depths, and landing conditions throughout Bellwether Cove. Grant tore off one of the contact slips. They'll want marina records, he said. I'll handle it. Mara was entering a produce invoice at Ruth's desk. Are they surveying every dock? Anything significant? Then they'll come to mine. Grant glanced through the office door toward the western end of the property. They're not going to survey that wreck. They're surveying landing conditions. Mine has conditions. He folded the contact slip into his shirt pocket. Don't waste their time. 2 Thursdays later, Mara heard tires in the cleared lane while she was replacing trim beside the harbor doors. A town truck stopped behind the boathouse. A woman in an orange vest stepped out carrying rolled maps. 2 men followed with tripods and measuring rods. They worked without asking Mara much beyond her name and whether the structure was occupied. One measured the lane. Another took depth readings from the first safe section of dock. The woman compared metal reference pins along the shore wall with lines on her map. Grant arrived in his golf cart just as she sprayed a blue mark beside the outer cleat. He demanded to know what she was marking. Public landing boundary, she said. Mara stood with her hammer in hand and listened as the woman explained that the finished harbor survey named this dock as Bellwether Cove's only public landing. Grant's face changed. That's impossible. This is private property. The boathouse is, the woman said. The landing isn't. Grant looked toward Mara, anger rising to cover something more vulnerable. Then the surveyor unrolled her map across Ruth's workbench and placed one finger on the narrow lane. Somebody made sure it stayed that way, she said. Grant leaned over the map. Made sure how? The surveyor slid her finger along a dotted line running from Cove Road, past the restaurant parcel, and down the Blackberry Lane. This access was dedicated with the landing after the hurricane of '38. The structure was rebuilt with private money, but the shore approach and a 20-foot section of dock were reserved for public use. Reserved by whom? Franklin Bellwether. Mara knew the name only from a photograph in Ruth's upstairs hall. A narrow man with a shovel-shaped beard standing beside 3 other men on the remains of a pier. Ruth's father had changed Bellwether to Bell after returning from the war because, according to Ruth, he was tired of spelling it for people. Grant pointed at the map. That lane crosses restaurant property. The recorded access follows the western boundary. It's narrow, but it doesn't cross the restaurant parcel. It has for years. The lane has moved, the boundary hasn't. Mara pictured the Blackberry route Ellis had celebrated defeating. They had cleared whatever route was passable without knowing the legal lane ran underneath it. Grant pressed both palms to the workbench. My grandmother owned all of this. She never said there was a public dock. The surveyor looked toward the harbor doors. She may not have thought she needed to. Did she ever stop people from using it? No, Mara said. Grant turned. That doesn't mean anything. Grandma let people park behind the restaurant. That didn't make the parking lot public. No, the surveyor agreed. This does. She tapped a notation on the map. Grant read it twice. His mouth flattened. Mara came closer, though the lettering meant little to her. There was a date, a registry reference, and a line describing access from the public road to the mean low-water landing. It did not give her anything she had not signed for. It carved something out of it. What does public mean here? Mara asked. Exactly. People have the right to reach the water and land from it. You own the boathouse and maintain the structure. You can set reasonable safety rules. You can't permanently gate the lane, charge admission, or reserve the landing for private customers. Grant straightened. She doesn't have customers. The surveyor looked at the lumber, tools, and fresh boards stacked by the wall. Then, that part should be easy. One of the men outside called for another depth reading. She rolled the map halfway, then stopped. The condition is going to be an issue. Mara looked at the rope across the dock. We've established that. The town won't list it as usable until the public section passes inspection. The outer landing is unsafe now. If it isn't stabilized, the harbor committee can post it closed. When? Preliminary report goes out next month. Final recommendations in early September. Grant gave a brief, humorless laugh. There you go? Mara looked at him. There I go? Where? You inherited a public liability. The surveyor's gaze moved between them. We'll send written findings, she said. There may be technical assistance for access improvements, but nobody should assume town funding. Ownership and public use are separate responsibilities. Grant's expression suggested that last sentence had been written specifically to annoy him. After the survey crew left, a blue line remained beside the cleat and two small flags stood in the lane. Grant stared at them. Mara picked up her hammer. You're blocking my light. You don't understand what this does. It sounds like it lets people use a dock they've been using for 80 years. You're liable if somebody gets hurt. I was liable yesterday. Yesterday you could close it. I did close it. You could close it forever. She set the hammer on the bench. Why are you afraid? I'm not afraid. You drove through 2 survey rods to get here. I didn't hit them. One is under your golf cart. Grant looked back. A yellow measuring rod lay beneath the rear axle. That proves nothing. Mara folded her arms. He lowered his voice. Public access brings problems. Parking, trash, people wandering where they shouldn't. If the lane is public, they'll assume the whole waterfront is. Then we put up signs. We, the royal we, family helping family. He heard it. She watched him decide whether to pretend he had not. The marina has security and insurance, he said. I can manage access better than you can. How? We shift the route through my entrance, put a gate at the lane, direct people to the fuel pier, and use this as overflow when needed. The surveyor just said the lane can't be gated, not without an alternate route, and you charge them at the marina for services, not access. Mara looked toward the neat slips, the fuel canopy, and the white sign listing transient tie-up rates in red numbers. You spent 5 minutes calling it a liability, she said. Now you want to manage it. I'm trying to protect you. No, you're trying to make sure the one dock you don't control doesn't matter. Grant's head pulled back as though she had thrown something. His phone rang. He silenced it without checking the screen. Think about what you're saying, he said. You have no money, no insurance, and half a repaired building. People hear public dock. They don't see your family history. They see free. Is that what you saw when you gave it to me? He looked down at Ruth's workbench. The map had left a curl of damp grit across the wood. We didn't know, he said. That wasn't my question. Everything with you is a trap now, only when you answer honestly. Grant retrieved the measuring rod from under the golf cart and leaned it against the lane marker. He got in without another word. Mara waited until he drove away before sitting on the edge of the workbench. The boathouse had not changed. The roof still needed real shingles. The dock still moved beneath the tide. Her bank balance was $271, and she had spent the morning using the back of an old spoon to hold trim in place because the right clamp cost $38. Only public dock sounded important. It also sounded expensive. Ellis arrived an hour later carrying a paper bag from the bakery. He looked at the blue paint, looked at Mara, and handed her a biscuit. You knew? She asked. I knew people used it. Did you know it was public? Ruth said nobody had the right to close it. That sounds like her opinion. Most things did when she said them. He put on his glasses and read the photocopy of the map the surveyor had left. His lips moved around the technical language. Franklin Bellwether, he said. Mean old stick. You knew him? I knew of him. I'm not 100. You carry butterscotch candy in your pocket. That's planning. Mara took a bite of the biscuit. Grant wants to route access through the marina. Course he does. He says I can't manage it. Can you? She stopped chewing. Ellis folded the map. Public means strangers. Strangers are creative. They tie 30-foot boats to 10-foot cleats, leave coolers where people walk, and think tides are a rumor. You'll need rules. I can make rules. You'll need insurance. I can barely make rent, and I don't pay rent. You'll need the outer landing stabilized before the report, or they'll put up a closed sign. I know. Could let them. Mara looked at him. Nothing says you have to spend what you don't have, Ellis said. Public right stays. Doc waits until somebody else figures it out. Who? Town, family, next owner? I'm not selling. Then you. The answer sat between them. Ellis removed the lower half of the biscuit from her hand and ate it. Hey, you weren't eating, I was thinking. Burns calories. The town's preliminary notice arrived 9 days later in an envelope addressed to property holder, Bellwether Public Landing. Diane opened it at the restaurant because it had been delivered with the restaurant mail. Mara found the pages spread across Ruth's desk when she came in for her evening hours. Diane stood beside the window, arms crossed. Did you know about this? She asked. I was there when they measured it. You didn't think to tell me? I thought Grant would. Grant thought you would. Then between us, you had excellent odds. Diane touched the notice. They're calling it the Bellwether Landing. That was the name when it was dedicated. It's Bell property. The building is. Don't repeat bureaucratic language to me. Mara put down her bag. What do you want me to say? That you understand the position this puts us in. Us again. The lane runs beside my parking lot. People will leave cars there. They'll walk behind the kitchen. They'll use our restrooms. Then tell them the restrooms are for customers. And have an argument every day? Welcome to running a restaurant. Diane's eyes narrowed. You think this is funny? No, I think you're upset because the broken thing you gave me came with people attached. I did not give you a broken thing. We divided an estate. You divided it before I entered the room. We have had that conversation. No, you ended that conversation. Diane turned toward the harbor. Your grandmother should have disclosed this. Mara heard the accusation beneath the words, aimed at a woman who could no longer answer. She probably thought we knew, Mara said. Well, we didn't, because nobody went inside. Diane gathered the pages and tapped their edges against the desk. The sensible choice is to let Grant take responsibility for the dock. He wants the access rerouted to his marina. That may be safer. It may be profitable. So, profit is immoral now? Only when Grant says he's protecting me. Diane held out the notice. You cannot afford this. Mara accepted it. A box near the bottom listed minimum corrections. Replace unstable deck boards, secure loose door area, install a safety ladder, confirm load capacity, post tide depth, restrict the outer section until piling repair. No mystery, no miracle, just work. What happens if I can? Mara asked. Diane's expression softened into something nearly sorrowful. Honey, she said, you can't. Mara folded the notice and put it in her bag. That evening, she and Ellis carried the loose safety ladder out of the weeds. Nora arrived after her ferry shift with a wire brush and a can of rust converter. None of them discussed whether saving the landing was sensible. They scraped until the old iron showed through. Near sunset, a man in a dinghy approached the rope and called, Is this the public dock? Mara looked at the missing boards, the blue boundary mark, and the people beside her waiting for an answer. Not yet, she called back. Then she lifted the ladder onto the workbench. But it will be. Rust Converter turned the ladder black and shiny and made the boathouse smell like a tire store. Nora held the bottom rail steady, while Mara worked the wire brush into a corroded joint. This thing going to hold a person? Nora asked. It held Ellis. That isn't an answer. Ellis is preserved. From the workbench, Ellis lifted one finger without looking up from the cleat he was cleaning. Nora scraped harder. What do we have to do before the town comes back? Mara had taped the preliminary notice to the wall beside the repair list. The 2 pages were beginning to curl in the damp. Secure the ladder. Replace 11 more boards. Post depth marks. Keep everybody off the outer section. Confirm the load capacity. How do you confirm load capacity? Apparently you don't just invite Grant down and see what happens. Ellis looked up. Shame. The list was simple enough to fit on 1 page and expensive enough to consume Mara's sleep. Stainless hardware cost more than she thought hardware had a moral right to cost. The safety ladder needed new mounting brackets. Depth markers had to be visible in rain and darkness. The outer rope had to become a rigid barrier that an impatient person could not duck beneath. By the time she added the cheapest liability policy the survey office would accept, opening the dock required $1,900 Mara did not have. The insurance agent had spoken kindly, which made the number worse. There may be a lower rate if the town assumes maintenance, he said over the phone. Will they? Not according to the survey documents. What if I promise to be very nervous whenever anyone uses it? He laughed, then realized she was not entirely joking. That doesn't change the classification. Mara thanked him and wrote the premium on a biscuit bag. At the bakery, Claudia found her staring at it beside the mixer. You planning to frost that? Claudia asked. Insurance. Bad flavor. Mara folded the bag. Claudia set down a tray of unbaked scones. You can take the Friday counter shift if you want it. I already work Friday. You work 4:30 to 10. Counter goes to 2. That's 9.5 hours. Your math education finally paid off. Mara looked through the front window toward the ferry terminal. Rain streaked the glass. Nora stood beneath the terminal canopy, drinking coffee from a paper cup. I'll take it. Claudia nodded. Eat before noon. Last person I let work straight through fainted into the cinnamon twists. Did you throw them out? Of course. Mara waited. Claudia frowned. After I sold the ones she didn't touch, longer bakery shifts brought more money and less strength. Mara began falling asleep over Ellis's receipts. She entered one carburetor rebuild as charitable giving and listed half a cord of maple under office supplies. Ellis took the pencil out of her hand. You're no use, stupid. I'm tired. Same result. He sent her upstairs to sleep and finished sorting bolts by size beneath the workbench lamp Nora had rigged to a marine battery. When Mara woke, the loft was dark, and someone had placed a plate over her half-eaten sandwich to keep the mice away. Ellis had also left a note on the ledger. Wood was payment. Don't get creative. The next evening, Grant arrived carrying a clean white folder. Mara was drilling holes in a plank for the rigid dock barrier. She turned off the drill, but did not invite him in. I talked to my insurer, he said. Congratulations. He'll cover this landing under the marina policy if we execute a management agreement. Mara looked at the folder. How long have you had that printed? I asked him yesterday. The survey came out 9 days ago. I spent 8 days thinking. Must have hurt. Grant set the folder on the workbench. You keep the boathouse. The marina handles the public access, maintenance, and liability. We direct people through our lot during business hours. What happens after business hours? We lock the marina gate. The public access is permanent. Then we establish reasonable hours. The surveyor said, I can't do that. She said you can set reasonable safety rules. A clock isn't a safety rule. It is when nobody is supervising. Mara wiped sawdust from the plank. What do you get? I just told you. Responsibility. What else? Grant's eyes shifted toward the harbor. We'd install marina signage. Public visitors could buy fuel, ice, supplies. It's common sense. And the lane? We close it to vehicle traffic. It already is. To foot traffic, too. The marina route is safer. Mara opened the folder. The agreement was only 3 pages. Grant's name appeared beneath Bell Marina. Hers appeared as property owner. A paragraph on the second page granted the marina sole authority over landing operations, commercial services, and temporary closure. You could close it for marina events, if necessary. You could give your customers priority. It doesn't say that. It says sole authority. Mara, somebody has to make decisions. I am somebody. He rubbed his jaw. You're working 2 jobs and rebuilding a condemned shed with a 70-year-old man. Ellis is 68. Did he tell you that? Yes. He was 68 when he quit. Ellis's age seemed flexible enough that Grant might be right. Mara closed the folder. Why did you give me the boathouse if you thought I couldn't make decisions? We didn't know about the dock. There it is. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. Grant took a breath through his nose. He was trying not to lose his temper, and the effort made him look more like Ruth than anything else he did. I can pay for the repairs, he said. All of them, not just the public section. We can get a piling crew in next week. The offer hit the tenderest place. Mara imagined the blue tarp gone, the outer dock steady, electric lights in the loft. She imagined sleeping without checking the weather 3 times before bed. Grant could accomplish in a week what might take her a year. All she had to do was let his name go over the door. Thank you, she said. No. His restraint broke quietly. You would rather fail than let me help. I asked you to bring a dumpster. I brought it, 4 days late, and that erased every other thing I've ever done for you? No. This agreement does a pretty good job, though. She handed back the folder. Grant did not take it. Mom was right. About what? You're punishing us. Mara set the folder on the bench between them. You keep saying that whenever I stop making things easy. He left it there. Elise arrived after he was gone and read the agreement while sitting on the new dock boards. He offered to pay for everything, she asked. Yes. That's not nothing, I know. You could negotiate. He's not negotiating over whether he controls it, only how politely he gets control. Elise turned to the second page. This closure language is bad. Thank you. I'm not saying you should sign. You sounded close. I'm saying $1,900 is $1,900. Mara sat beside her. The first dock section was wide enough for both of them now. Low tide exposed the rocks below, green with weed. Farther out, the unusable boards rose and fell gently around the bad pilings. Elise took an envelope from her purse. No? You don't know what it is. It's money. It could be a thoughtful card. You don't buy cards without matching envelopes. Elise held it out. 800. Mara did not take it. I can't. You can. Your hand works. I'm not taking guilt money. Then don't. What other kind is it? Elise looked toward Ruth's harbor house. New white curtains showed in the windows. 2 porch chairs had appeared beneath the front eaves. I ordered planters, she said. What? 6 cedar planters for the porch, custom sizes. They were $800. You spent $800 on boxes for dirt? I canceled them. Why? Because every time I looked at the porch, I pictured you brushing your teeth with a bottle. Mara stared at the envelope. Elise's voice became firmer. You cared for Grandma. I helped divide the property while you were caring for her. I cannot change that by buying brackets, and I'm not asking you to tell me I'm forgiven. I don't want you buying your way out. I'm not trying to get out. I'm trying to come in. Mara looked down at her hands. A splinter had worked beneath her left thumbnail. Flour remained caught in the dry skin around her knuckles, no matter how often she washed them. If I take it, it's a loan. No. Elise. If it's a loan, you'll pay me before you buy plumbing. I don't want to owe you. You already don't trust me. Owing me $800 can't make it much worse. That was almost funny. Mara tried not to smile and failed. Elise placed the envelope on the dock. Call it my share of the public, she said. The words were clumsy, but the cost behind them was real. Mara took the envelope. 6 cedar planters, they were very nice. For $800, they should have watered themselves. They practically did. With Elise's money, Mara bought the insurance policy, ladder brackets, reflective depth markers, and enough stainless bolts to make the hardware clerk ask what she was building. A public dock, she said. He gave her 10% off without being asked. The bait shop donated 2 used cleats. Nora's ferry supervisor released a section of aluminum handrail from storage. Walter arrived with a pot of chowder and stayed to help install it. Claudia sent biscuits labeled, "Not for Boston." Nobody contributed enough to solve the whole problem. Together, they solved Tuesday. The survey crew returned on a windy afternoon. They checked the ladder, barrier, boards, handrail, and tide marks. A man with a load tester measured the reinforced first section, while Mara stood on shore, pretending not to watch his face. He wrote on his clipboard, "Limited small craft use," he said. 6-person maximum on the landing section. Outer dock stays closed until the pilings are replaced. Does it pass? He looked at the repaired boards. It passes what you asked it to pass. The orange-vested surveyor installed a temporary white sign at the head of the lane. Public landing. Small craft only. Mara read it 3 times. That evening, Nora approached from the ferry in a work skiff with Ellis sitting stiffly in the bow. "You trust her driving?" Mara called. "No," Ellis said. I trust the latter. Nora brought the skiff alongside. Mara caught the line, wrapped it around the donated cleat, and felt the repaired dock take the weight. Ellis climbed ashore first. The boards held. He looked down, stamped one boot experimentally, and nodded. "Still trying to kill you," he said. "Just slower now." The dock found new ways to try by Wednesday. A man in a yellow raincoat tied his dinghy to the aluminum handrail instead of either cleat. The handrail bent 6 inches toward the water before Mara heard the metal groan. "That's not for boats," she called from the boathouse. The man looked at his line. It was convenient. So is the cleat. I didn't want to trip anybody. You've solved that by removing the handrail. He moved the line, though not with the speed of a person who believed he had done anything wrong. On Thursday, 2 women left a bag of leaking clamshells beneath the public landing sign. Friday brought a 32-foot cruiser, whose captain ignored small craft only and attempted to back into the closed outer section. Mara ran down the dock, waving both arms, while Ellis shouted suggestions that grew less nautical with each sentence. The captain leaned over his rail. "My chart says public dock. The sign says small craft. My tender's a small craft. Then use your tender. I'm only stopping for ice. Then buy ice at the marina. Grant visible across the water at the fuel pier. Watch the entire exchange." Later, he sent Mara a text. "Nice customer service." She replied, "Thank you." He did not answer. Mara added a chalkboard at the lane entrance. "Open for dinghies and small working boats. 6 people, max. No overnight tie-up. No fuel. No trash. Do not tie to the handrail, even if convenient." Ellis read the board with his glasses low on his nose. Too many words. "I'm responding to experience. People who need that last sentence won't read it." He was right. The next handrail incident happened Sunday. Still, most people used the dock without causing trouble. A sailboat crew came ashore for groceries and returned with a broom to sweep the boards. 2 shellfish harvesters tied up before dawn, left no trash, and quietly replaced a worn line with a new one. A marine electrician used the landing to reach a moored boat, then spent 20 minutes examining the dead service panel in the boathouse. "Main feed's disconnected at the restaurant end," he said. "Panel in here is ancient but not burned. What would it cost to get 1 light and 2 outlets?" He named a number Mara could not pay. Then he looked at the tide chart she had organized for Ellis, recognized his own unpaid invoice clip beneath it, and frowned. "He still says I owe him for an impeller. Did he install an impeller? He says he did. Did your engine stop overheating?" "Yes." "Then this sounds less mysterious than you're making it." The electrician came back the following Tuesday and wired a temporary circuit in exchange for Mara, untangling the invoices from his seasonal business. For the first time, a warm bulb lit Ruth's workbench after sunset. Mara stood beneath it with the switch in her hand. The light was not bright. It caught the rough grain of the wall, the clean jars of fasteners, and the red plaid thermos. It made the rest of the boathouse seem darker by comparison. Ellis looked up from the repaired safety ladder. "Well, it's a light." Sharp observation. "I like it." He nodded once. Ruth did too. The bulb allowed Mara to work later, which was useful and not entirely wise. She began keeping a landing log on a clipboard beside the door. Date, vessel, purpose, problems. Nora added a column labeled foolishness. Ellis added another labeled weather, then wrote people beneath it. When fog closed the harbor mouth, ferry crews used the lower room to wait for visibility. Mara brought down the rush seat chair from the loft and found 2 benches behind the restaurant that Diane had intended to throw away. Elise cleaned them and sewed simple cushions from the least mildewed section of the old canvas awning. The boathouse began acquiring things people needed. A wall clock from Claudia, 5 minutes fast because ferry workers preferred it that way. A water cooler from the bait shop. A rack for wet jackets made from salvaged oarlocks. A first aid kit Nora mounted high enough that nobody could place coffee on it. A charging station beside the new outlets with 3 cables and a handwritten warning that said, "Take your phone, not the cable." Mara opened the harbor doors whenever she was working. People stepped inside to get out of rain or ask about tides. They told her which channel marker was leaning, whose skiff had dragged its mooring, and when the outer harbor smelled like fuel. She wrote things down because Ruth had written things down, though Ruth's notes had usually included opinions about the person reporting them. The public dock did not turn into money. It turned into work. Mara emptied trash, wiped mud from the floor, retied bad knots, and explained the six-person limit so often that she started saying it in her sleep. She bought toilet paper for a toilet she could not yet connect. She spent $22 on a new broom after someone borrowed the donated one and forgot to return it. At the bakery, Claudia found her calculating hand soap costs on a pastry box. "You're paying to let strangers sit in your building," Claudia said. "Yes. Bad business." "It isn't a business. Worse." Mara rested her forehead against the stainless steel table. Claudia cut a scone in half and pushed it toward her. "Eat? I'm beginning to think that's your answer to everything." "No. Sometimes my answer is fire somebody." "Are you firing me? If I fire you, who opens Tuesdays?" Mara ate the scone. Traffic at the landing changed the restaurant in ways Diane resented and benefited from, equally. Boaters walked up the lane for coffee, chowder, and the restrooms. Lunch sales climbed on clear days. So did the number of wet footprints near the host station. Diane placed a sign on the back door. "Restrooms for Bell Restaurant customers only." Someone added in pencil, "How much chowder counts?" Diane blamed Mara. "I was working at the bakery," Mara said. "You encourage this." "Public access?" The casual attitude. They stood in Ruth's office, though it no longer felt like Ruth's. Diane had replaced the old harbor calendar with a framed photograph of the restaurant at sunset. A new label maker sat beside the computer. Every shelf had a neat white strip identifying its contents. Paper, menus, tax. Mara had found her own payroll notes in a drawer labeled MISC. "We need rules," Diane said. "I have rules. The lane is full of people. There were 12 people today." "Exactly. 7 ate lunch here. That does not give them the right to wander through my service area. They're following the route on the town sign. The town sign is wrong." Mara looked at the newly labeled shelves. "You could mark the restaurant boundary. I should not have to put keep out signs on family property." Apparently, people don't know where family property ends. Diane's face changed. Mara regretted the sentence, but not enough to take it back. Her mother gathered a stack of invoices. "Grant says you're letting commercial operators use the dock. Working boats are allowed. You're taking business from him. I don't sell fuel. I don't rent slips. I let people step onto land. He charges transient fees for services. That's still how he makes his living. So I should close public access because Grant built a business beside it. I didn't say close it. You want his marina to manage it. I want you to stop treating every practical suggestion as an attempt to steal from you." Mara leaned against the desk. Fatigue made her limbs feel loosely attached. "You gave me the boathouse because you thought it had no practical use," she said. "Now everybody has practical suggestions." Diane's fingers tightened around the invoices. "Your grandmother is dead. The restaurant needs a new freezer. Grant is carrying more debt than he admits, and Elise has yet to book enough guests to cover 1 month of that house. We did not sit around plotting how to hurt you. We made choices under pressure. You made mine without me." "Yes." The word came so plainly that Mara looked up. Diane's chin trembled once. She steadied it. "Yes," she repeated. "We did. Because you were sleeping upstairs with Mom and falling apart, and every time we tried to discuss the estate, you said it could wait. She was dying." "I know. Then why did it matter that the house got photographed? Why did Grant need the marina numbers before she was buried? Because I could not stand in that room with you every night and listen to her stop breathing." Diane's voice cracked on the last word. She turned away. Mara saw, suddenly, not the efficient woman behind Ruth's desk, but her mother outside Ruth's bedroom door, carrying clean towels she did not need to carry, asking whether anybody wanted tea, and leaving before the answer. Mara swallowed. "That doesn't make what you did fair, I know. The admission did not repair anything. It did make anger harder to hold in its previous shape." Diane wiped beneath one eye with the side of her thumb. 7 people ate lunch, 7 from the dock, possibly 8. One man had chowder twice. Red cap? Yes. He complained about the price. He finished 2 bowls. People can be cheap and hungry. Mara almost smiled. Diane looked toward the kitchen. "I'll mark a walkway from the lane. We can put a sign by the back steps. Grant won't like it. Grant doesn't run the restaurant." The sentence surprised both of them. That night, rain beat hard against the blue roof tarp. The patch section held, but water came under the harbor doors in thin silver lines. Mara rolled towels along the threshold and moved the public benches farther inside. At 11, someone knocked. Grant stood in the lane wearing his marina jacket over pajama pants. "My east float lost a hinge," he said. Mara glanced toward the harbor. Through the rain, 2 sets of navigation lights moved near the mooring field. "What do you need?" "I have a service skiff outside with 3 men. They can't land at the marina until I secure the float." "The ferry terminal?" "Locked." Mara looked at him. Grant's mouth tightened. "Can they use the public dock?" "Not my dock." "Not your dock." "The public dock." "Small craft," she said. 6 people maximum. "I know the rules. You texted me about my customer service. It was a compliment. It was capitalized." Rain ran off his hair and down his forehead. "Mara." She took the flashlight from its hook. "Tell them to come along the safe section. You stand by the barrier so nobody gets clever." Grant followed her onto the dock. Together, they caught the skiff's lines and brought 3 soaked marina workers ashore. When the last man stepped into the boathouse, Grant tested the donated cleat with his boot. "It holds," Mara said. He looked at the repaired boards, then at the warm bulb glowing above Ruth's bench. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It does." Grant returned the next morning with 4 marina employees and repaired the bent handrail. He did not ask permission. Mara came back from the bakery to find him kneeling on the dock with a socket wrench, rain jacket tied around his waist. 1 employee held the rail straight while another drilled a new mounting hole. The third was carrying rotten boards to the dumpster. Mara stood at the head of the dock with a bag of Claudia's leftover muffins. "What is this?" she asked. Grant kept tightening the bracket. "Aluminum handrail. I mean, all of you. Mark has welding equipment." The man holding the rail looked up. "I'm Mark," finally Mara said. Mark glanced at Grant. "Have we met?" "Several times, apparently." Grant tested the bracket with both hands. "We bent it unloading last night. The yellow raincoat idiot bent it. We finished it." That was not an apology, but it had arrived with 4 adults and a welder. Mara opened the paper bag. "Muffin?" Grant looked inside. "What kind?" "Yesterday." He took one. They reinforced the handrail, replaced 2 boards beside the landing, and adjusted the depth marker that had shifted in the rain. Grant moved through the work with the same contained focus he showed around boats. He gave short instructions, listened when Mark disagreed about the bracket angle, and did not once suggest rerouting the public lane. At noon, his employees returned to the marina. Grant stayed behind to sweep metal shavings from the dock. "You could have told me you were coming," Mara said. "You would have said no." "I might have." "Exactly. That doesn't make it okay to arrive with a work crew." He leaned the broom against the boathouse. "Do you want me to put the old rail back?" "You know that isn't the point." Grant rubbed a thumb over a burr on the new bracket. "The dock helped us." "We fixed what we used." Mara handed him another muffin. "What kind is this one?" he asked. "Also yesterday." He ate it anyway. For 3 days, peace held. Then a white bell marina sign appeared at the lane entrance beneath the public landing sign. An arrow pointed toward Grant's parking lot. In smaller letters, it offered fuel, ice, transient services, restrooms. Mara removed it and carried it across the property. Grant was at the fuel desk arguing with a delivery driver about gallon totals. He saw the sign under her arm and ended the call. "What happened?" "You put this on my lane. I put it on a post beside the road." "You drilled it into the public landing post, so people know where services are. People know where the marina is. It's the place with all the boats and the word marina on it. Visitors don't. They found my dock." Grant came around the counter. "That's the point. They land there, then ask you where to buy ice. So I tell them. What if you're not there? They followed the giant marina masts." He took the sign from her. "You have a charging station, water, shelter, and free tie-up. You're providing marina services whether you call them that or not. I don't charge." "Exactly." The driver at the door studied his clipboard with great concentration. Mara lowered her voice. "It's a public dock. It isn't a free branch of Bell Marina. I didn't say it was. You put your name on the post. I put an arrow. With your name. Because arrows without names are just shapes." The delivery driver made a sound suspiciously like a cough. Grant set the sign behind the counter. "Fine. I'll use a separate post. Ask me first. It's beside the road. The lane is my responsibility. The access is public. That argument took you a while to discover." Grant's nostrils flared. You don't get to claim public when it helps you and private when it doesn't. The sentence struck close enough to hurt. Mara looked at him before answering. No, she said. Neither do you. She left him with the sign. The final harbor survey came out on a Monday. Copies appeared at the bakery, ferry terminal, bait shop, restaurant, and marina. A full page listed dock depths and emergency approaches. Bellwether Landing was marked limited use, public, the only public entry in a column of private facilities. Someone at the town office had used a photograph taken before Mara cleared the lane. The boathouse leaned behind a wall of blackberry canes. Roof collapsed inward beneath the blue tarp. It looked less like a public facility than evidence in a neglect case. Claudia pinned the page beside the bakery register. You could sue them for that picture, she said. For accurately photographing my building? People sue for less. The survey brought more visitors. Some came because they needed the landing. Others came because they wanted to see the harbor's only public dock and were disappointed that it consisted of repaired boards, a rope barrier, and Mara telling them not to stand in groups of 7. A travel writer took photographs of Ruth's thermos without asking. It's an authentic relic of the working harbor, she said. It's an old coffee container. That's what makes it authentic. Please don't open it. The woman opened it. A smell of ancient milk rose between them. Mara folded her arms. The travel writer put the lid back on. Most attention faded after a week. The people who remained were the ones who used the place because it worked. Nora's ferry crews, Ellis's repair customers, shellfish harvesters, sailors coming ashore for parts. The marine electrician, who now left invoices in a labeled tray because Mara had finally convinced him that his truck dashboard was not an accounting system. Diane painted a white line along the edge of the restaurant lot and installed 2 signs directing dock users toward the back entrance. She complained about the cost of paint, then added a chalkboard offering coffee and chowder to arriving crews. The Red Cap man had a 3rd bowl. Elise furnished the harbor room, as if resisting every instinct she had developed in boutique hotels. Nothing matched. The benches wore canvas cushions. The rush seat chair stood beside a green metal table Nora found at the ferry terminal. Elise hung framed tide charts instead of decorative prints and placed a basket of clean towels near the door. No little soaps? Mara asked. I considered it. I know you did. I'm growing. The harbor house was not growing in the way Elise needed. Guests admired the views, then complained about the ferry horn, marina lights, and restaurant exhaust. One couple requested a refund because gulls had woken them at 5:11 in the morning. What did they expect? Mara asked. Apparently tasteful gulls. Elise began sleeping in the smallest upstairs bedroom between bookings because she had given up her Portland apartment sooner than planned. Some mornings, she crossed the property in slippers to drink bakery coffee in the boathouse. They never discussed the $800. Mara kept a handwritten balance beneath her mattress and reduced it by 20 or 30 whenever she could. Elise returned each payment by leaving supplies, toilet paper, light bulbs, a waterproof doormat. Their accounting became intentionally dishonest. At the restaurant, Diane's neat labels could not control the invoices piling beneath MISC. The new freezer strained the restaurant credit line. Grant's marina fuel charges arrived late, incomplete, or mixed with restaurant deliveries. Mara found 3 duplicate entries and a missing payment large enough to matter. She carried the fuel sheets to Grant's office after closing. He was sitting at his desk with his glasses on, a sight he considered private. The office walls held maintenance schedules, tide tables, and photographs of boats Grant had restored. A bowl of wrapped peppermints sat beside the radio, untouched. These totals don't match, Mara said. He took off his glasses. Good evening. You billed the restaurant for 2 deliveries it didn't receive. I allocate shared fuel. You allocated the same delivery twice. Grant took the sheets. I'll look at it. And this payment from Rourke Charters never hit the account. They're late. They paid 6 weeks ago. I checked the deposit record. His face hardened. You checked my account? The marina ledger feeds into the restaurant books. You gave me access. Grandma gave you access. And nobody revoked it. He stood and closed the office door. The click unsettled Mara more than if he had slammed it. Who have you told? He asked. Mom knows the totals are off. Who else? No one. Grant sat again. He opened a desk drawer, moved a stack of envelopes, and found a deposit slip. I put Rourke's check against the tank service bill. You used a customer payment to pay the service contractor without recording either side. I was moving money. You made $18,000 disappear on paper. I know where it went. Your books don't. My fuel system needed emergency work. Was it repaired? Part of it. Mara looked at the maintenance schedules on the wall. Everything had a date, a name, and a check mark. Grant's control was visible everywhere, except the numbers. How much debt are you carrying? She asked. That is not your business. Then stop charging pieces of it to the restaurant. His eyes flashed. You think your little free doc gives you the right to audit me? No. Doing the restaurant books gives me the obligation. I kept that marina alive while you were. He stopped. While I was what? Grant looked away. Helping? Mara asked. Is that the word? I was going to say caring for Grandma. No, you weren't. He pushed the fuel sheets back across the desk. I'll correct it. By Friday. You don't give me deadlines. Then Mom gets the sheets as they are. Grant stared at her. Behind him, through the office window, the marina floated in clean, illuminated rows. A place built to prove nothing was out of position. Friday, he said. Mara took the folder and opened the door. Mara. She turned. Grant's anger had drained, leaving him older than 41. The public dock isn't the reason I'm in trouble. I didn't say it was. Everybody thinks I took the valuable part. You did. He flinched. The valuable-looking part, Mara amended. That's not the same thing. He looked at the desk. No, he said. It isn't. Friday morning, corrected fuel entries appeared in Mara's restaurant inbox. Every number reconciled. Grant had worked through the night. He had also replaced the marina sign at the road. This time, it stood on its own post, 6 feet from the public marker, with a smaller arrow and no claim to the lane. Mara left it. Autumn entered the cove in pieces, the bakery windows fogged before sunrise. Ellis began wearing a red wool cap and complaining that the boathouse floor pulled cold through his boots. Nora brought a small electric heater that could not run at the same time as the workbench light without tripping the temporary circuit. The outer pilings worsened with each high tide. One developed a vertical split Mara could fit 2 fingers into. Replacing them remained far beyond her reach. She moved the rigid barrier 3 feet closer to shore and changed the chalkboard. Outer dock closed. Yes, even for 1 minute. Grant read it on his way past. Storm season will finish that piling, he said. I know. You should pull the outer deck before it tears loose. With what crew? I can give you 2 men Sunday. Mara looked at him. As family helping family, as people removing dangerous lumber. She nodded. Sunday. The weather report playing inside the bakery that afternoon mentioned a low-pressure system moving north along the coast. Claudia turned up the radio while shaping bread. Too early for a nor'easter, she said. The announcer used the phrase rapid intensification. Mara thought of the split piling, Grant's east float, and the blue tarp tightened over her bed. Outside, the harbor had gone perfectly still. By closing time, the stillness had turned the bakery windows into mirrors. No gulls fought over the trash cans. No halyards struck the masts. Even the ferry's wake seemed to flatten before reaching shore. Claudia turned up the radio again. The storm had shifted west. Coastal winds could exceed 60 miles an hour by Monday evening. The harbor would begin feeling the surge before dawn. Go, Claudia said. Mara was lining a sheet pan with parchment. We have another batch. We also have windows. I'd like them boarded before they become decorative knives. You'll need help. I have a nephew with a truck and poor judgment. Perfect boarding material. Mara untied her apron. Claudia handed her 2 loaves of bread, a bag of biscuits, and a plastic tub of chicken soup. This is too much. It expires when I say it does. What do I owe you? Come open Wednesday if the roof remains attached. Mara carried the food to her car beneath a sky the color of wet cement. At the boathouse, Ellis had already arrived with plywood, rope, and a battery radio. He stood on the dock staring at the split piling. Sunday's too late, he said. Grant's sending men. Grant's got his own troubles. Across the cove, the marina had become a machine in motion. Employees removed canvas covers, doubled lines, and shifted boats away from the outer slips. Grant stood on the fuel pier directing a crane operator. His voice carried over the still water. Mara set down the food. Can we pull the outer deck ourselves? Not safely? Can we make it safer? Everything gets safer if you remove enough of it. They began with the loose boards nearest the barrier. Ellis backed out bolts while Mara stacked lumber inside the boathouse. Nora arrived in her ferry jacket with 2 coils of heavy line across one shoulder. "Last passenger runs at 6, she said. "After that, service is suspended. Does the ferry stay here? We're taking her to the protected berth around the point. Terminal crew will use the office until the surge gets high." She looked at the outer dock. "We pulling that?" "Trying." Nora set down the rope and picked up a wrench. Grant's 2 employees arrived before sunset. One was Mark. The other was a broad woman named Jo, who operated the marina crane and had a silver braid hanging through the back of her watch cap. "Grant says, remove everything beyond the 3rd piling," Jo said. Ellis shook his head. "2nd, 3rd still has life. Not in a northeast surge." Jo stepped onto the safe section, crouched, and watched the pilings move beneath the water. "2nd, she agreed. The 5 of them worked as daylight drained from the harbor. They stripped boards, cut corroded fasteners, and passed heavy sections hand to hand. The outer platform was too large to dismantle completely, so Jo ran 2 lines beneath it and secured them to shore anchors. If it tore free, the lines might keep it from becoming a battering ram. Mara carried the last usable board inside. Her arms shook. Mark checked the remaining bolts. "That's it." "What about the split piling?" she asked. "Let it go if it wants to," Ellis said. "Don't chain a dying thing to a sound one." Mara looked at the shortened dock. It ended abruptly beyond the rigid barrier, raw beams exposed where the outer section had been separated. Weeks of work had been reduced by 12 feet in an afternoon. Jo saw her face. "You saved the good half," she said. "I know. Doesn't feel like it?" "No. Usually doesn't." The marina employees hurried back across the property. Grant had called twice during the work and did not sound patient either time. Nora helped Mara cover the harbor room benches with plastic. Ellis climbed to the loft and inspected the tarp lines. "You're not sleeping up here," he called. "Where am I sleeping?" "Floor, shore wall. The public can step over me. Charge them. It's a public dock. Charge for stepping over you." Mara moved the camp mattress downstairs, wedging it beneath Ruth's workbench. She lowered the frame tide charts, unplugged the charging station, and placed the first aid kit in a dry bin. Nora tested the marine radio she had brought from the ferry terminal. "Channel 16 for emergencies. 72 for local working traffic," she said. "Battery's good for 12 hours if you don't talk about your feelings. Then it'll last Ellis a month." Ellis came down the stairs carrying Ruth's blue blanket. "Roof line over the loft window is lifting," he said. "Needs another rope." They went outside. The first breath of wind moved across the harbor while Mara was tying the new line. It touched her cheek, faded, then returned from a different direction. By 7, the water had begun slapping the shortened dock. Diane called everyone to the restaurant at 8. Mara found her mother in the kitchen filling stock pots with water. Tape crossed the harbor windows. Walter and Patrice were moving dry goods from the lowest storeroom shelves. Elise stood in the dining room, wrapping the framed photographs in towels. Grant came through the back door carrying a toolbox. "Fuel's shut down," he said. "Power at the pier is isolated. Boats are doubled." Diane looked at the wet cuffs of his pants. "Have you eaten?" "I'm fine. That was not my question." She handed him a bowl of chicken stew before he could object. Mara put Claudia's soup in the walk-in refrigerator and joined Elise at the windows. Together, they carried Ruth's tuna photograph away from the glass. "Where are your guests?" Mara asked. "Canceled. One wanted to come anyway because storms are atmospheric. Did you explain roofs are more atmospheric when they're missing?" I kept the deposit and told him no. They set the photograph on the bar. Grant ate standing up. Diane pushed a second piece of bread into his hand. For a few minutes, the family moved around one another in the old restaurant patterns. Elise taped, Diane packed. Mara checked freezer temperatures. Grant found the correct wrench without being told which drawer. Ruth's absence occupied the empty spaces between them. Grant finished the stew and set down the bowl. "The restaurant wharf will go underwater around midnight," he said. "Don't use it." "No one plans to," Diane said. "I'm telling everybody." He looked at Mara. "How much of your dock is left?" "The safe section." "We removed everything past the 2nd piling," Jo said 3rd. Ellis disagreed. "Of course he did." Jo agreed. Grant accepted that with a slight nod. "Keep it clear. It's public. I know what it is." "Do you?" Mara, I don't have time. Then stop giving me orders. His face darkened. Diane placed both hands flat on the prep table. Enough. Grant looked at their mother, surprised. Her dock, Diane said. Her decision. The kitchen went quiet except for the compressor beneath the cold table. Grant stared at Diane. Then he looked at Mara. Fine. Your decision. But if working boats come in, don't let them tie broadside, bow or stern into the wind, one at a time on the landing. Get people ashore and move the boat to a mooring if possible. Mara knew most of that. The rest was useful. Okay, she said. I'll monitor 72. So will Nora. Of course she will. He picked up his toolbox. Where are you going? Diane asked. Back to the marina. Stay here. I have 11 boats in the water. You have employees. They have homes. So do you. Grant gave a tired laugh. Apparently, I have debt. Mara felt the glance he did not give her. Diane did not know the amount. Elise did not know Mara had found it. The knowledge sat at the table like another person. You did the repairs? Mara asked. Enough. That's not a number. He met her eyes, hearing himself in the question. East float hinges are new, he said. Fuel pier anchors passed in spring. 2 chains are older than I'd like, but they passed. Passed what? Inspection. When? April. He was defensive because he was afraid, not because he was careless. Mara could see the difference now. It did not make the chains newer. Take another line from shore, she said. Water drops there too fast at low tide, then run it high. It'll foul the service lane. The service lane's closed. Grant considered it. I'll look. Grant, I said I'll look. Diane's mouth tightened at the familiar phrase. He saw it and almost smiled. I'll run the line. After he left, Diane packed towels, coffee, and 2 flashlights into a plastic crate. For the boathouse, she said. You think I should stay there? No. I think you will. Mara accepted the crate. Diane added a roll of trash bags. People always need trash bags in emergencies. For what? Everything. It was such a Ruth answer that all 3 women went still. Elise closed the crate. I'm coming with you. The harbor house is safer, Mara said. I know. You should stay there. I heard you. I'm still coming. Diane looked toward the taped windows. I'll stay at the restaurant with Walter and Patrice until the surge turns. The generator's tested. Mara wanted to ask her to come too. She also wanted to say the restaurant was no longer the center of every problem. Instead, she handed Diane Nora's spare radio, channel 72. Her mother clipped it to her belt. Rain began before they crossed the parking lot. Not heavy rain. Needles of water traveled sideways beneath the security lights. The white walkway line Diane had painted gleamed along the restaurant boundary. At the boathouse, Nora had arranged the harbor room before Mara could. Dry towels on the green table. First aid kit open. Landing log on a clipboard. Battery lanterns on both benches. 6-person capacity written in large letters beside the door. Ferry secured around the point, she said. Terminal shutting when water reaches the lower steps. Ellis was tying a final brace across the harbor doors. Mara set down Diane's crate. You all have safer houses. Nora looked around. This is where the radio is. I have a house, Ellis said. Wouldn't call it safer. What's wrong with it? Kitchen doesn't take requests. At 10, the wind began to lean on the building. The blue tarp snapped overhead, then settled under the added ropes. Rain struck the harbor doors hard enough to force mist through the seams. Water rose over the lower rocks and swallowed the muscle-covered bases of the pilings. Radio traffic came in bursts. Mooring check completed. Skiff hauled at the bait shop. Channel marker 6, dragging south. Grant's voice cut through clearly from the marina, directing Mark and Joe to move equipment uphill. He sounded calm. Mara pictured his maintenance wall, every schedule and checkmark glowing beneath office lights. At 11:20, the ferry terminal closed. At midnight, Diane reported water across the restaurant wharf. By 1, the marine forecast upgraded the gusts. Elise sat on one bench with Ruth's blue blanket around her shoulders. Ellis dozed upright in the rush seat chair, waking whenever the dock struck a wave. Nora watched the radio. Mara stood at the harbor doors, counting seconds between the hardest gusts. The boathouse moved, but it moved together. At 1:17, something metallic boomed across the cove. Ellis was awake before the echo faded. The radio crackled. Bell Marina to any crew on 72. Grant's voice had lost its calm. East fuel float is off the outer chain. Nora reached for the handset. Another boom came through the rain. Grant spoke again. Fuel float is moving. I need everyone clear of the marina. Nora answered before anyone else moved. Bell Marina. Ferry crew at Bellwether Landing. Is fuel isolated? Valves are closed. Power's dead. Float still attached at the inner hinge and one shoreline. Any leak? None visible. A burst of static swallowed Grant's next words. Mara opened the harbor doors far enough to look across the cove. Rain struck her face. The marina lights blurred in the wind, but she could make out the fuel canopy pitching at one end. A dark shape rose and slammed down against the pier. The public dock lifted beneath her feet. Ellis caught her arm and pulled her back inside. Don't stand in the door admiring it. I wasn't admiring it. You had the same expression. The radio crackled again. Dorsey to Bell Marina. We're coming in from the north moorings. 2 aboard. Another voice followed. Lena May outside marker 4. 3 aboard. Marina, confirm your landing is closed, Grant answered. Marina is closed. Stay clear of the east pier. Nora took the handset. Dorsey and Lena May, Bellwether Public Landing is open for small craft approach. Limited berth. Come one at a time. Bow into the northeast wind. Dorsey first. Mara looked at her. Both of those are working boats, 22 feet and 24. Light cruise. The load limit is for the landing, not the water. We get people off, move each boat to the lee moorings if they can. Elise threw off Ruth's blanket. What do I do? Clear the benches, Mara said. Dry towels by the door. Put the soup somewhere people won't kick it. I can heat it, not with the light on. I'll turn off the light, then they can't see. Elise stared at the single electrical circuit as if offended by its lack of ambition. I'll use the restaurant, she said. Mom has a generator. Don't go out there. The lane is sheltered. Elise. I can carry soup, or I can sit here and panic. Pick the useful one. She pulled on her raincoat and left with Claudia's container beneath one arm. Ellis tied a safety line across the inside of the harbor doors. Nora moved the green metal table against the shore wall. Mara put on Grant's gloves, clipped a flashlight to her jacket, and stepped onto the safe section of dock. Wind drove the rain so hard it seemed to come up from the boards. Dorsey, Public Landing has one white light at the door and a handheld on the dock, Nora said over the radio. Call when you see us. A reply came through broken static. Mara could not see the boat. She saw Grant's marina instead. Mark and Joe moved along the shoreside pier in headlamps, carrying lines away from the fuel float. Grant stood near the service lane, one hand raised as he directed them. The extra line Mara had told him to run stretched high from the float's inner corner to a shore anchor. It snapped taut whenever the float lifted. Lines holding, Ellis said beside her. Mara had not heard him come out. For now. For now is what lines do. A green navigation light appeared through the rain. Public Landing. Dorsey has you in sight. Mara picked up the radio handset Nora passed through the door. Come slow. Dock ends at the barrier. Do not aim beyond the white light. That's usually how docks work, the captain replied. Mine's shorter than it looks. Understood. The Dorsey came in bow first, engine growling against the wind. A wave lifted the boat above the dock, then dropped it until Mara could see the wet deck through the rain. Ellis caught the bowline on the second throw. Mara wrapped it around the cleat and let it run half a turn instead of locking it tight. 2 aboard, the captain called. Bring one off at a time. A man in orange bib pants climbed onto the landing. The dock bowed under him and rose again. He reached back for a canvas gear bag. Leave it, Mara said. It has my radio. Then bring the radio, leave the bag. The captain stepped off next. His right hand was bleeding through a wrapped bandana. Nora pulled him inside, while Ellis held the boat off the dock with a boat hook. Can you move to the west moorings? Mara asked the first man. Engine's running hot. How hot? It's an engine. Hot. Useful answer. Ellis shouted over the wind. Keep her idling. Take the inside mooring past the bait dock. Current's less there. The man looked at him, recognized him, and nodded. You coming? I just got dry. You're standing in rain, compared to you. Ellis climbed aboard anyway. The Dorsey backed away, turned awkwardly in the crosswind, and disappeared toward the west moorings. Inside, Nora unwrapped the captain's hand. He had cut his palm hauling a mooring line. It needed stitches, but the bleeding slowed under pressure. The dock log lay open on the workbench. Mara wrote Dorsey, 2 ashore. 1 remained with vessel, hand injury. Then corrected the entry when Ellis radioed that the boat was secured, and both men were coming back in a dinghy. Facts first. People attached. The Lena May arrived 12 minutes later with 3 exhausted shellfish harvesters and a dog. Mara saw the dog only when it leaped from the deck and landed against her knees. No, she told it. The dog shook rain over her entire body. Its owner climbed ashore. Sorry, 6-person maximum. He weighs 40 pounds. He contains 8 gallons of water. They brought the crew inside. Elise returned with heated soup, a coffee urn, and Diane directly behind her carrying a crate of dry mugs. You came too? Mara asked. Walter and Patrice have the restaurant. Your radio stopped answering. I was landing boats. I know that now. Diane looked around the harbor room. The captain of the Dorsey sat on one bench with his bandaged hand raised. 3 members of the Lena May crew stood dripping near the workbench. Nora spoke into the radio. The wet dog had discovered Ellis's crust pile. Diane set down the mugs. Coffee, she announced. Soup. Restrooms are at the restaurant if the lane is safe. No one asked how much chowder counted. The radio snapped with Grant's voice. Bellwether Landing, I need space for 4 marina crew. Mara counted. Diane, Elise, Nora, the injured captain, 3 from Lena May. Ellis had not returned. 8 inside, though the capacity applied to the dock, not the building. Landing is clear, she answered. Bring 2 at a time. I have 4 in one skiff. 2 off, skiff backs away, then 2 more. Mara, I need my people ashore. So does everybody. A silence followed. 2 at a time, Grant said. His work skiff came through the rain, with Joe at the controls. Mark and another marina employee crouched low in the bow. Grant stood at the stern holding a line. The skiff hit the dock harder than the previous boats. The repaired cleat jerked beneath Mara's hands but held. Mark stepped off with a coil of chain over his shoulder. Leave it, Mara said. Grant says we need it. Then Grant can stay with it. Grant looked up from the skiff. Rain streamed off the brim of his watch cap. We have to get a second shore restraint onto the float. Why? The hinge is tearing. Can you reach it from the service lane? Not without crossing the fuel pier, which you closed. Yes. What does the chain do? Joe answered from the controls. We stage it here, take the skiff around, connect from the water side, run the line back to the west bollard. The public dock was not simply an exit anymore. It was the only safe place to load the equipment. Mara looked at the chain, the skiff, and the dock beneath her feet. 1 section at a time, she said. Nobody stacks equipment on the landing. Mark comes off, chain goes straight inside. Next person. Grant's mouth tightened. Okay, not fine, not, I'll see what I can do. Okay. They followed her instructions. Joe backed the skiff away after each person. Mara counted boots on the dock and sent people inside before allowing the next one off. The chain went beneath the workbench. A heavy line followed. Grant was last. As he climbed onto the landing, a wave struck the shortened outer platform. Wood cracked beyond the barrier. The split piling tilted toward the channel. One of the restraint lines snapped tight, singing under the strain. Ellis's voice came over the radio. Mara, let the shoreward line go before it pulls your anchor. He was somewhere beyond the rain, returning in the Dorsey's dinghy. The outer platform swung against its remaining piling. If the line held, it could drag the shore anchor through the side of the safe dock. If both lines were cut, the platform could drift into the mooring field. Joe dropped to one knee beside the barrier. Which line? Mara pointed. Red tracer is shoreward. Black keeps it off the channel. You sure? Nora and I ran them. Grant reached for the red traced line. Wait, Mara said. On the next drop, not the lift. He looked at her. If you release while it's up, it swings into the landing. Grant watched the platform rise on the surge. It seemed to hang there, black water visible beneath it. Now, Mara said. He pulled the release pin. The line raced through the fair lead. Joe caught the bitter end before it struck her face. The outer platform dropped, swung toward the rocks, and settled against the black restraint line. It no longer pulled at the goods section. The landing stayed beneath them. Grant stared at the exposed beams beyond the barrier. You cut this back at the right place, he said. Ellis did. You listened. Sometimes I do that. A corner of his mouth moved despite the storm. Then the radio called from the marina. Grant, hinge is going. He gathered his crew. Mara blocked the dock entrance with one arm. 2 at a time. We don't have time. You lose the dock, You don't have a landing." Joe looked at Grant. "She's right." He glanced into the harbor room. Everyone was watching. Ferry crew, shellfish harvesters, Diane behind the coffee urn, Elise holding a towel, the injured captain with his hand elevated. No one looked to the Bell Marina logo on Grant's jacket. They looked to Mara. "Two at a time," he said. The operation took 40 minutes. Joe and Mark carried the chain out first. Grant followed with the heavy line. The skiff made 2 trips between the public landing and the fuel float. Mara managed the dock, while Nora managed the radio. Ellis returned and stood at the barrier, calling wave timing. Diane poured coffee. Elise wrote names and vessel locations in the landing log when Mara's hands became too wet to hold the pencil. The extra restraint reached the west bollard seconds before the inner hinge tore free. The fuel float lurched away from the pier. The new line snapped taut. So did the high shoreline Grant had added after Mara insisted. Together, they held the float off the marina docks. Grant's voice came through the radio, breathless. "Float is contained. Repeat, contained. No visible release." Joe returned first, then Mark. Each came ashore alone. Grant remained in the skiff until the others were clear. When he finally reached the landing, the wind pushed him sideways. Mara caught the front of his jacket and steadied him. He looked at her hand gripping the Bell Marina logo. "Careful," he said. "People will think we're family. Take off your wet boots before you come inside." He obeyed. Near 4, the strongest wind moved east. The rain softened from a roar to a hard, steady fall. Radio calls became damage reports instead of emergencies. One mooring had dragged. 2 skiffs were missing. The ferry terminal had lost 3 lower steps. The restaurant wharf remained underwater, but attached. The boathouse had lost the outer platform, 1 window, and a strip of roof shingles beneath the tarp. The public landing remained open. People filled the lower room. Wet jackets hung from the oarlock rack. Empty soup cups covered the green table. The Lena Mae's dog slept on Grant's bare feet. Mara sat at Ruth's workbench, entering the final vessel location into the log. Dorsey, West Mooring. Lena Mae, temporary lee. Mooring Bell Marina, crew all ashore. She looked at the last line, then added, "Fuel float contained." Dawn appeared slowly in the harbor doors, turning the rain gray. Grant stood beside her reading the entries. "I thought public meant nobody was responsible," he said. Mara closed the log. "That's because you confuse shared with ownerless." He absorbed the sentence without fighting it. Across the room, Diane tucked Ruth's blue blanket around the injured captain's shoulders. Elise refilled the coffee urn. Nora leaned asleep against the wall. Ellis sat in the rush seat chair with the wet dog's head on his knee, pretending not to notice. Grant looked at the warm bulb, the benches, the depth chart, the rules, and the people sheltered beneath the damaged roof. "We gave you this place because we thought it couldn't do anything," he said. Mara rested one hand on Ruth's workbench. "No," she said. "You gave it to me because you thought I couldn't." Grant looked as if she had struck him with something he had left lying around. The dog raised its head from his feet, decided nothing edible was happening, and went back to sleep. "I didn't think that," he said. Mara waited. Grant rubbed rainwater from the back of his neck. "Not exactly." "What exactly did you think?" "That you didn't want what we wanted. That part was true. You never talked about owning anything. You never asked about expansion or appraisals. You slept upstairs with Grandma and worked wherever somebody needed you. So, you gave me whatever nobody else wanted." He looked across the room at Diane and Elise. Neither rescued him. "I thought you needed less," he said. Mara felt the sentence settle into the place where help had been sitting for weeks. "You thought I was used to less." Grant's face tightened. "Yes," he said. It was not enough. It was more honest than anything he had given her at the restaurant table. Outside, something loose struck the rocks. Ellis shifted the dog's head from his knee and stood. "Water's dropping," he said. "Time to see what we still own." The lane was covered with seaweed, sticks, and 2 orange life jackets that belonged to nobody present. One of Diane's restrooms for customers signs lay face down near the grease bins. Mara picked it up and carried it toward the restaurant. The public landing sign remained on its post, tilted 15 degrees toward the harbor. The marina looked bruised in daylight. The fuel float sat 20 feet out of position, held between the 2 emergency lines. One corner of the canopy had collapsed. A section of East Pier decking floated against the seawall, and 3 boats leaned at wrong angles in their slips. Grant stood beside Mara at the mouth of the lane. "I need to close the marina," he said. "How long?" "A week if the fuel line tests clean. Longer if it doesn't. You can stage workers here." He looked at her. "Public access," she said. "1 crew at a time. No equipment left on the landing. 6-person limit. My people will follow your rules. Your people followed them last night." "I meant me." She handed him the fallen restaurant sign. "You'll struggle, but we believe in growth." His laugh surprised both of them. Diane's restaurant wharf reappeared with the falling tide, covered in brown weed, but still attached. The kitchen lost 2 cases of food when a low freezer outlet shorted. Elise's harbor house lost roof shingles and developed a leak over the guest room with the best view. The boathouse lost more. The outer platform had settled against the rocks in 3 large pieces. 1 restraint line remained tied to the shore anchor. The split piling was gone. The blue tarp had torn near the ridge, exposing a section of roof where rain had soaked the loft floor and 1 corner of Mara's mattress. She stood beneath the hole. Ellis climbed the stairs, pressed a boot against the wet floor, and looked up. Could be worse. People keep saying that when they don't plan to pay for it. I plan to pay for half the shingles. With what? You found $4,600 of expenses I forgot to claim. You cannot spend a tax deduction. No, but I can spend what I didn't send the government. That is not how. I'll buy shingles. Mara sat on the damp edge of the iron bed frame. Her whole body hurt. Her hands smelled like wet rope and coffee. The public room below was full of dirty cups, used towels, and 1 abandoned boot. The building had survived, but survival had not made it finished. Ellis sat beside her. The frame creaked beneath them. "You did good," he said. "We all did. You said where people went, they went." Mara stared at the torn tarp. "I was scared." "Would have been strange if you weren't. I kept thinking the dock would go. It still might. Everything does eventually." "You are terrible at comfort." Bonnie said that. He rarely spoke her name. Mara turned. Ellis rubbed a dark stain on his work pants. She also said, "People don't need you to tell them a thing won't hurt. They need to know you'll still be there when it does." Mara looked toward the stairs. Below them, Nora was teaching Elise how to coil a wet line properly. Diane had found a broom. Grant was outside lifting debris from the landing he had once tried to control. The boathouse had been hurt. They were still there. The marina remained closed for 19 days. Grant tested the fuel lines, replaced the broken hinge assembly, and argued with his insurer until his voice went hoarse. Customers with boats trapped in the remaining slips reached them through Mara's dock. Mechanics landed in skiffs carrying tool bags. Joe kept a schedule on the harbor room clipboard, so crews did not exceed the landing limit. Grant never put Bell Marina signs on the lane. He did place a laminated card beside Mara's chalkboard. Marina service crews must check in with landing steward. Mara found him installing it. "Landing steward?" she asked. "It sounds better than my sister. Does it pay better?" He took out his wallet and handed her a check. It covered the extra insurance cost, coffee, cleaning supplies, and every hour she had logged managing marina access. The amount was exact. "This is not control," he said. "No, it's not an ownership offer. No, it's a service payment." Mara inspected the memo line. "Public landing support." "Okay," she said. Grant waited. "Thank you." He nodded and left, before gratitude became a conversation. Diane's offer arrived less gracefully. She put a typed contract beside Mara's adding machine and pretended to sort invoices while Mara read it. 12 bookkeeping hours a week, paid at a rate higher than before, with additional shifts approved and paid separately. The contract included mileage reimbursement and a sentence stating that family obligations were not part of the employment arrangement. Mara read that sentence twice. "You wrote this?" "Elise helped, I can tell. You used the word pursuant. I know what pursuant means." "Do you?" Diane removed her glasses. "Do you want the work?" "Yes." "Then sign it." Mara took the pen, but did not use it. "I'm not doing Grant's marina books under the restaurant contract. Grant will arrange his own. I won't hide transfers between accounts. You shouldn't. I won't come in on unpaid days because someone forgot to order halibut." Diane drew breath. "Unless," Mara added, "the halibut is dying in the parking lot. That seems reasonable. Then yes." She signed. Diane put the contract in a folder labeled MARA instead of MISC. The harbor survey gave the town enough justification to contribute materials for the public portion of the landing, not enough to rebuild the boathouse. 2 replacement pilings, safety hardware, and an inspection were approved for spring. Mara still had to provide the decking and organize the work. She accepted before anybody could call the help a miracle. The boathouse roof took longer. Ellis bought shingles. Nora recruited off-duty ferry crew for one Saturday. Grant sent Mark with the marina lift after asking Mara in advance. "Can I bring equipment down your lane?" he asked over the phone. Mara checked the weather out of habit. "Yes." Was that difficult? "Call again, and I'll reconsider." They replaced the harborside roof first. The shoreside waited beneath the repaired tarp until Mara had enough bakery pay and marina service income for another stack of shingles. The loft acquired insulation, 2 safe outlets, and a small electric heater that could run without turning off the light. The old toilet became functional after a plumber traded labor for 6 months of organized billing and a promise that Ellis would never again store fish in a receipt bucket. Ellis rejected the second condition. Mara accepted on his behalf. Winter crews began using his repaired workbench inside the harbor room. He charged for motor work. Mara handled the appointments and books. Claudia supplied coffee and biscuits at wholesale, and Mara sold them from a narrow counter near the shore wall. Nobody paid to land or sit down. They paid for hot coffee, a dry towel, a repaired starter, or somebody answering the radio when they were late. No single thing earned enough. Together, they worked. Elise stopped advertising the harbor house as a tranquil waterfront escape. She described it as a house in a working cove near an active ferry, marina, restaurant, and public landing. The complaints decreased. So did the people expecting tasteful goals. Mara repaid $180 of the planter money before Elise found her balance sheet beneath the mattress. She crossed out the remaining amount and wrote, "Paid in public chairs, roof labor, and emotional distress." Mara wrote beneath it, "Emotional distress overvalued. Balance due." The sheet passed between them for weeks, gathering arguments in different ink. Diane apologized on a cold evening in February. She came to the boathouse after the restaurant closed and sat at Ruth's workbench without taking off her coat. The harbor room was empty. Snow edged the shortened dock, and the warm bulb reflected in the windows. "I'm sorry we decided without you," she said. Mara wiped the coffee counter, though it was already clean. Diane continued, "I told myself you were too exhausted. Then I told myself you would choose the boathouse anyway because you loved Mom. Both versions made me feel considerate." Mara stopped wiping. "I don't know what I would have chosen. I know. I might have chosen this. I know that too. That doesn't make it better." "No." Diane folded her gloves together. "I miss her." The admission was small and almost embarrassed. Mara sat across from her. "So do I." They stayed until the heater clicked off and the harbor room grew cold. Nothing was solved in one conversation. Diane still became defensive. Mara still heard insult where fear sometimes lived. But after that evening, each of them became better at returning to the conversation instead of declaring it finished. Spring drove the new pilings into the harbor floor with a noise that shook every cup on Mara's counter. The town crew replaced the public landing section. Grant's crew rebuilt the outer deck under a paid contract Mara reviewed twice. Ellis rejected 3 boards for grain defects and insulted the supplier until Joe made him sit in the harbor room. When the final inspection passed, the temporary sign came down. The permanent plaque was plain blue and white. There was no Bell Marina arrow, restaurant logo, or family name. Diane arrived while Mara was tightening the last bolt. She held a small brass key in her palm. "I found this in Mom's desk," she said. "Bottom drawer, taped beneath the old cash box." Mara recognized it. Ruth had worn it on a string inside her shirt when she worked at the boathouse. "You kept it?" "I didn't know what it opened. You knew." Diane looked at the brass key. "I think I knew enough." Mara accepted it. The new hardware store lock took a different key. The old brass one no longer opened anything. She hung it on a nail beside Ruth's red plaid thermos. That evening, the harbor doors stood open. Nora came ashore carrying ferry paperwork. Ellis argued with a mechanic over an outboard. Elise arranged clean towels without making them decorative. Grant waited while a shellfish crew unloaded before bringing his service skiff alongside. Diane entered from the lane with a pot of chowder. The rebuilt boards held beneath wet boots, tool bags, and people passing in both directions. Upstairs, a lamp glowed in Mara's small, finished room. Down below, the place her family had dismissed, filled with working voices, coffee, rope, and light moving on the water. Mara stepped outside and rested one hand on the public dock sign. Behind her, someone called her name because something useful needed doing. She turned toward the open doors.